Draft Mechanic is a proud member of Punchboard Media. Pull up a chair at punchboardmedia.com. Draft Mechanic, Episode 101.
On this episode of Draft Mechanic, we discuss our recent trip to Geekway to the West. We put New World, a Carcassonne game, on tap, and I talk about nitrogenation in beer packaging. No, that's it. I mean, trust me, it's going to be a full episode, but that's all we're going to talk about. There's just a lot of games from the Geekway wrap-up. So sit back, relax, grab a pint, and enjoy the show.
You've seen the future and it works to take a mile. Know that all is for the best in the best of our world.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Draft Mechanic. I'm Jake.
And I'm Danielle.
And Draft Mechanic is a podcast about board games and craft beer and anything we can do to tie the two together.
Here at Draft Mechanic, we like our beer like we like our board games.
From the gateway city, St. Louis, Missouri.
I don't know if we're allowed to steal that.
I think Alice would be okay with us doing that just once ever. Hey, everybody, thank you so much for toining in. Toining? Oh, I'm out of practice. Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Draft Mechanic. I'm sorry that this one is a week late. We got back from Geekway, and I had some issues with my speaking zone that kind of delayed things a little bit, and sometimes that happens, so thank you so much for tuning in a week late to us this episode. We are here we are, to talk about the Geekway to the West.
On the plus side, there is an interesting piece of board game news that happened in that interim week, so we will be able to talk about it in the news section now that we are releasing this week.
Yeah, so if this is your first time tuning into Draft Mechanic, thank you so much again for joining us. DraftMechanic.net is your one-stop shop for all your Draft Mechanic needs. You can find us on the internet at all of your usual social medias, Draft Mechanic, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all those places. Just put an @ in front of it. You'll probably find us, or a slash or something like that. I don't know. You know how to website. You're on the internet.
We also have a Board Game Geek Guild that is guild number 2470. There will be a thread up there for this episode as there is for every episode. So if you're listening to this and you have anything that you'd like to add to the discussion, that is a place to do it.
Mm-hmm. And big thanks to our two new micro badgers. We have a Board Game Geek micro badge, and Ben Martin and Wes Dow picked it up since last episode. Thank you so much. We're now at 102. And
Excellent.
I'm going to continue to shout these people out because I love it. Thank you so much for picking that micro badge up.
If you happen to be in the Charlotte, North Carolina area, we also do twice monthly meetups, one on the first Thursday of every month at Good Road Cider Works, and our next one is going to be on June 6th, and one on the third Tuesday of every month at Salud Cerveceria. That was the last one we just had, and there will be one later in June.
Mm-hmm. And as of right now, we have about 55 weeks to plan the next Geekway bottle share, so I think we can probably get it set up by then.
Yes, I would assume so.
Oh, so yeah, top of the show here. Thanks so much to everybody who said hey at Geekway, or just came to the bottle share, or just saw us randomly throughout the weekend playing board games. This is the first time in a while we've had like a number of people come up to me like, hey, you're Jake and Danielle from Draft Mechanic. We listened to the show. So like that was freaking awesome and made my day and made some really tough, days a lot better. But boy, that was a great freaking con. Always my favorite con of the year.
Yeah, I was going to say, they weren't tough days because of Geekway. Geekway is amazing. You were just having some dental issues at the time.
Oh boy.
If you see pictures of Jake from that weekend, he looks like he has an egg in his cheek.
My jaw is smaller now, and I'm able to talk and bring you all of the Draft Mechanic episode talking that you want to hear from me.
Cool times.
All right, the games news. So yeah, we were originally going to record the Monday after Geekway, and this news kind of came out Monday, and we figure might as well just talk about it some anyway, and obviously with a delay we've got more information, but the Spiel des Jahres nominees have been released from their pens. Right?
I don't think they're penned up.
That's how they release them now. They have them in the cage, they open up the cage, and all the games run out. Yeah?
No.
Okay, fine. Danielle, would you like to give us the facts?
Sure. The Spiel des Jahres nominees this year are Just One from Ludovic Raudi and Bruno Sauter and Repost Games, Where Words from Ted Alsbach and Bezier Games. Now, you may be a little confused. That is the German release was this past year. Mm-hmm. So you are going to get them when the German release happens. So that's why Where Words is on this year's. And Llama from Reiner Knizia and Amigo Games.
I know nothing about that game.
I don't either. Apparently,
I don't think it's here yet.
Brandon from What Did You Play This Week did a written review of it a ways back, I want to say like a month or two ago.
Okay.
So if you are looking for more information on that, go check out the What Did You Play This Week website. He did a write-up on it.
And Punchboard Media actually put a compilation together of a whole bunch of different people's reviews of stuff that is in the Spiel and the Kenner Spiel. So punchboardmedia.com, check that out, and you'll see like our Wingspan review, not to kind of steal your thunder on the Kenner Spiel.
I was going to say, speaking of the Kenner Spiel, those nominees are Carpe Diem from Stefan Feld and Aaliyah Games, Detective from Ignacy Trevicek and Portal Games, and Wingspan from Elizabeth Hardgrave and Stonemeyer Games. Now, of those 6 nominees, we've both played Wingspan. We just got Detective at the Geekway trade table, so we'll be playing that shortly, and I'm sure you will hear our thoughts after we do. I have played Just One a number of times. You have somehow managed to be out of town every time.
Which is amazing, because this is the kind of game that generally would have appealed more towards me, I think. I'm kind of more of the party game person of the two of us.
I don't know. It's a real good game. I like it. I'm going to spoil that. I'm going to say I like it a lot.
I'm really excited to play that. I do also find it funny that Just One is not the most recent Ludovic Rowdy and Bruno Sauter game to enter our house, because the Seventh Continent Part 2 just arrived in the last few days.
True fact.
Which is inexplicably the same designers. That blows my mind.
We've also played Werewords. I think we might have talked about it a ways back. Our opinions are not great.
We've
on
also
that
played
one,
Insider, which is
a
a very,
better
very,
version.
very good
in our
game.
opinion. I'm sure if you like the roles from Werewolf, Werewords is a great game for you. But we've played a decent number of, obviously we haven't played Llama. You said I don't think it's over here yet. If it is, we've not gotten a chance to play it. Carpe Diem, I know we haven't played, but the Dukes of Dice have done a review of, if you're looking for some information on that one.
I think, like, my personal thought is Just One is going to run away with it for the Spiel. That seems like the most Spiel game that's spieled since Codenames, really.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure exactly what they're looking for, and not knowing one of the...
Yeah, not knowing Llama is obviously going to change that.
Yeah, but I absolutely love Just One. It is a dead simple game that makes people get in their heads so hard, and you're trying to like game the system in a way that I really love.
Well, what do you think about the Kenner Spiel, though? Because this is a weird one to me.
Why is it weird to you?
Well, I think obviously the money's on Wingspan, because...
Is it?
I mean, I think a lot of people are saying that the money is on Wingspan because it's super accessible. A lot of people are talking about it. It's obviously been impossible to get a copy of, and I'm sure that that's going to make it even more difficult to get a copy of if it does end up winning the Kenner Spiel. I've heard kind of mixed bag reviews on Carpe Diem for being kind of impossible to access if you have any kind of visual impairment, for one.
Oh, true fact.
Which would, I mean, I would hope that that would be a strike against it for a game that they want to make a entry game for a lot of people. But then I look at Detective, which is the one that honestly I would have thought would have the least attention in the Kenner Spiel, but right now, having not played it yet, I feel like that's the one I'd most likely give the nod to.
I have heard very good things about Detective from people who have gotten a chance to play it. Now, I'm kind of wondering if they want to give something that has sort of a more... that feels like it's going to have a darker theme than the rest of the games. I mean, Wingspan is about beautiful birds, and Carpe Diem, as far as I can tell, is a Stefan Feld game, so the theme is only just tiny little bits of thick on top of it.
Yeah, about as thick as the cardboard.
But, yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if Detective is sort of the direction that they would normally go, but obviously they nominated it, so they must not have a problem with the theme. I'm curious, though. Detective is the one that I'm most excited about. Having played Wingspan a couple of times, it is a good game, but I'm chomping at the bit to play Detective now that we have it.
I was really, really excited to pick that up at the Geekway trade table. We'll obviously talk about this at some point, but we got a copy of that at Geekway. But yeah, I think I want Detective to win because I think it's the most interesting choice out of the stuff on here. And I always kind of want the Kenner Spiel to be something that's a cool, interesting game. Wingspan, beautiful, super accessible. Carpe Diem is a game. But Detective seems like it could be something that draws people in and be like, oh, games can do that? And that's kind of what I always hope award winners can do. It
also is the most, I feel like, progressive of the hobby because it does involve sort of looking things up in the real world meat space. I think it is more than just a board game. While the others are good board games, I'm not going to say they're not, but they aren't so much outside of the world of what is normally considered a board game. And if you're going to be opening something up to that much play and that much publicity, I guess, it would be interesting to pick something that really does bust open the doors on what a board game can do.
Well, we will apparently know the winners of these later in the year. I think it's July is when that is occurring. That's when they'll tell us who did the wins.
They will announce the wins at some point, yes.
All right, tiny bit of game news. Terraforming Mars is on my freaking phone.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I got really lucky, and I happened to be looking at the internet for the 45 minutes that the open beta had invites. And
This feels mean that you're telling people this.
What I want to tell people is I've been playing Terraforming Mars on my phone, and it's actually fits surprisingly well. They did a little bit of, I guess, reformatting to make it fit on my phone. But what I will say, I'm surprised how much I still don't want to play it on my phone, because I want to play a phone game and be moving around a lot more. And I feel like Terraforming Mars on my phone is still going to be a 30-minute game, and I don't want to sit somewhere for 30 minutes. I don't know how you feel, because you were talking about the One Deck Dungeon app that just came out. You know, you would prefer to play that on Steam rather than on your phone. This is a kind of a section of phone gaming I haven't really thought about. Are longer games going to be held back on phones because you want to be more mobile when you're playing on that device?
First of all, I want to put a big asterisk on this. Jake has a big phone.
I have a big phone.
So
I have this iPhone 7 Plus.
To say that it fits nicely on your phone is different than saying it fits nicely on my phone or somebody who has a smaller phone. The other thing is, you also don't have some of the opportunities where longer games could be played on a phone. You don't have a train commute, which is something that a lot of people have.
I do a lot of driving.
You don't work in an office regularly where you might have a lunch hour and you could sit down on your lunch hour and play a 30, 45-minute game of Terraforming Mars. No problem. That's just not how your lifestyle works. You do travel on a plane, so I'm surprised that you wouldn't be excited about it for that particular option.
I do have a Nintendo Switch, and I am 60, 70 hours deep into my time at Porsche.
I know. I very much know. But what I'm saying is, if you regularly, every day, were getting on a train to go, when I was in grad school, I had a hour train commute every day that I went into class. That's a perfect opportunity for playing something of that length of game. And it's perfectly fine that you're not moving around, because you're not going to be walking around on the train anyway.
This might be a good final round question to ask. Is there a point at which games on your phone become too long? Maybe I'll put that on for the next episode, or whenever the next batch of big name profile releases come out. You know, we got Terraforming Mars, One Deck Dungeon just came out, Raiders of the North Sea is going to be on the way really soon, and those are kind of beefier games that are going to be more time intensive than your Potion Explosions or Knock Malls.
I mean, even thinking about that, Potion Explosion is still a 10-15 minute game if you play it on your phone, which is longer than most people might consider for a phone game. You think of something you pick up, you play a level of a Candy Crush style game, but I mean 15 minutes is still a decent commitment. It's still something that you're doing. So is there a cutoff?
I don't know. Let's save it for
look
the
for
final
this
round.
question in the Slack, y'all.
Look for this in the near future at draftmechanic.net/Slack. Join our Slack channel for free. All right, that's enough games news. Danielle, we have a rare segment of significant beer news.
We do have a segment of significant beer news, and you had said to me earlier you were surprised this wasn't the beer segment for the episode, but that is largely because I am not an accountant.
Can I lead into this?
Sure.
So often we've talked about mergers and acquisitions, and it's so refreshing to not say AB InBev this time.
It's also refreshing not to say Asmodee, because this is a board games podcast as well. But we are talking, in this case, about Boston Beer Company, or as they are probably better known to consumers, Sam Adams, and Dogfish Head. They are merging, there's quotes around the word merging, in a $300 million deal. This is expected to close, they said in second quarter, which means by the end of June, so real quick. Sam and Mariah, who are the founders of Dogfish Head, are going to receive a bunch of stock, and Sam is going to be on the Boston Beer Company board starting in 2020. Dogfish Head shareholders are going to be cashed out from some of the money from Boston Beer Company. This is also going to remove a private equity firm which had previously owned 15% of Dogfish Head Brewing that they had enlisted a couple of years ago. So that private equity firm is not going to own part of the new Boston Beer Company. Boston Beer Company was the second largest craft brewer in America, and Dogfish Head was the 13th. So we're talking about some major players in the craft brewing industry.
Big fish? Yeah? Yeah? Oh, you nailed it.
You did nail it.
Carry on.
This is going to keep them classified as a craft brewer. So that's good.
Yeah.
They're still going to be operating in the same space. Dogfish Head COO is going to stay on as the COO and president of Dogfish Head, while the existing Boston Beer Company CEO is going to remain in charge of the merged entity, because Boston Beer Co. is actually the acquirer in this. One of the things I did notice is that I'm on Facebook, I'm friends with the accountant for Noda Brewing, which is a local craft brewery, and he had mentioned that there is really, in financial terms, no such thing as a merger. Like, somebody has to acquire someone else. So that's why Dogfish's head is now acquired under Boston Beer Co., and their CEO is going to remain in charge of that main entity. They are also claiming that this is not going to reduce their respective sales forces, which is a really nice thing to say, and I hope it's the truth.
Yeah.
Right now, Boston Beer Co. has a sales force that is, I think they said that Dogfish Head sales force is like a quarter of the size of the Boston Beer Co. sales force. So hopefully they'll keep that on, because those people are very knowledgeable about their product. They said that in a lot of markets they were already using the same distributors, because they do both distribute through the 3-tier system, because they kind of have to.
It is the law.
They're going to be working to move to the same distributors in markets where they're not already. But it's a thing to keep an eye on. I'm excited to see what this means for those companies. And they acknowledged in a lot of their statements about this that they expect to see consolidation in more companies in the craft beer market going forward. Just honestly to compete with things like AB InBev acquiring craft brewers and other companies combining. Like, people are combining forces because it is easier to stake your claim in an industry and also make a point in politics, which a lot of people are having to get into. I know in North Carolina we just got the cap raised on self-distribution, so that kind of thing, it's easier to do if you have a larger force behind it. So combining these entities is probably going to happen more and more in the future. And really, we need to look at what is going to happen after that merger to determine whether or not it's a good or a bad thing for the market.
It is really kind of interesting to see this happen. It's one of the rare instances where I feel like the beer side of it is happening after the thing that happened in board games. We just had the Stronghold and Indie Boards and Cards kind of merger collection as indie game studios. And it is kind of a similar thing where you're seeing these kind of larger companies in whatever industry merge together to kind of keep their share, like you said, against your AB InBevs, your Asmodees, your Hasbros, that kind of stuff.
Well, this is hardly the first time it's happened in beer. If you look at something like, if you're in Charlotte, the brewers at 401 Yancey, I believe it's called, which is an outpost sort of 6 Point Brewing,
Southern Tier
and Victory.
Yeah.
And they sort of joined together to form a separate company and are doing the same thing. They're backing each other to provide a larger force for their brands going forward. You look at there are a couple of, I think Oscar Blues and Cigar City were joined together as one company. This isn't the first time that this has happened in craft beer. It's not even like the third time this has happened in craft beer. I'm just probably forgetting some. But it is certainly the biggest time this has happened. I mean, you're talking about the second largest and 13th largest craft brewers in the country. That's something to take note of just on sheer volume.
Yeah. And these are definitely brewers that have kind of been formative of a lot of craft breweries today. I mean, like when I go back and think about my upbringing in craft beer, Sam Boston Lager and Dogfish Head 60, 90, and Burton Baton are some of my like go-to, these are the classic things that got me in towards more beer. And I know like Chad over at Noda is a huge fan of Dogfish Head. You know, he grew up in the industry, really understanding and kind of following the Dogfish Head method. So it's really kind of interesting to see those two big giants merging together as well from that kind of historical point of view in craft beer. So if you have any thoughts about that, please share them in the guild. We're always looking for information and thoughts from people in the industry. If you have any idea what this will do, we are ready to hear your theorems.
Also, if you're not in the industry, tell us what you think this will do, because discussion.
Also, if you like
civil discussion,
if you like Dogfish Head's beer or Sam's beer, that's, you know, let me know what your favorite beer is. We'll have a beer next convention. Okay, Danielle, I think it's time to talk about the Kickstarters that we do usually at this time.
Sure, we have some project updates if you want to start there.
I think that's the right place to start.
So Cleopatra and the Society of Architects, which is coming from Mojito Studios, is currently funding at $295,735 of their $45,000 goal, with just shy of 3,000 backers. This project is ending on the day that this podcast drops at 10 in the morning, so you probably won't be able to back it when you're listening to this podcast, unless you're listening to it at like just when it comes out, in which case you have an hour maybe.
Yeah.
But it is ending on May 27th, and they have unlocked 14 stretch goals so far. And since we were recording this with 48 hours before, I'm sure they're going to have a big boost from that 48 hour, like, you wanted to back this thing notification that a lot of people get.
We will see that in the third update.
Cristallo from Lightheart Games is currently funding at $30,000 of their $4,200 goal with 1,458 backers. This is ending on June 1st, which is a Saturday. They have 4 component upgrades already unlocked, and at $50,000, which is, it's still a ways away, but not out of question, they will begin developing an app version. So if that's something you're interested in, go back the non-app version, and then they might work on it.
That is neat.
And Anachrony Fractures of Time from Mind Clash finished at $1.05 million of their $50,000 goal with 11,346 backers. So that means in the final 48 hours, they raised $150,000, which is a lot of money for 48 hours.
Oh boy.
Unsurprisingly, they unlocked all of their stretch goals.
Whatever that means.
Yeah, I mean, it means too much stuff in a box is what it means.
It's like, kind of thinking back to, because we recorded that episode, I think 50 hours to go, or like 46 hours to go, and I was like trying to get the updated totals. I'm just like, screw it. It's going to be way different by the time this ends. But then I looked at going back and looking at the Kickstarter page, that we've unlocked all our stretch goals, and I remembered back to the Seventh Continent expansion Kickstarter, which just delivered to us, and remembering watching the last like 5 hours of that as it went. They got like $1.5 million in the last 5 hours, which was bonkers. The campaign ended like $7.7 million, but they got to the point where they were just making up stretch goals. They're just like, I don't know, we'll put in an apocalypse card. Here's some kind of apocalypse. I'm like, you guys really are...
Put a wombat in the box.
Ooh, I mean, it kind of felt like that at the end. That box was heavy.
I was about to joke, put a marmoset in the box, but we've definitely played a game in the last 2 weeks that has marmosets in it.
Oh, yeah.
No, I'm sorry, they're marmots.
Marmots.
We'll talk about them in a little while.
Yeah, all right. So, for new projects, I have 2 for you. One of them is Matryoshka from...
That's not a new project.
Shh, it's new on Kickstarter. From Letterman Games is bringing this, I guess, second edition-ish of Matryoshka to the U.S. It's currently funding at $4,560 of its $3,200 goal with 218 backers. And I know we have more than 218 listeners, so some of you need to get up over there and back this game.
In fairness, you've been talking about this for a while, so some of them might already own it.
Very true, very true. So this is ending on Friday, May 31st, with an estimated delivery of December this year. You can get the base game for $16, or you can get the deluxe version for $25. That includes 4 additional card art sets with art from Jackie Davis, Alicia Volkman, Sally Godfred, and Katie Grierson. This is, like we said in episode 100, this is my 7th favorite game of all time. It is a card trading game where you're collecting sets of nesting Russian dolls. I played this 3 times in Geekway Week, which at a convention like that where you're trying to play a whole bunch of new games speaks to my obsession with Matryoshka. I'm obviously not an unbiased source on this game. I love the game, and it's fantastic, and I think everybody should have a copy of this. And for $16, I think it's totally within reason. And if you want to...
seriously, pay the $25.
Yeah, get the extra art. The extra art is really nice, and you have all this awesome stuff, and that allows you to also swap in sets that are super distinct, which if you do have any kind of problem looking at, like 2 sets that look kind of similar in terms of color and symbol, like we talked about in that discussion, you can swap these in, and then they're super different and very clearly obvious.
Now, I kind of got to wonder why they didn't do 6 unique sets. I mean, obviously the answer is because it costs more to get 6 unique sets commissioned. But you need 6 sets to play the lowest player count of this game. You can only play it with 3 and up, and you need 6 sets to play with 3. So if you're playing with the unique factions, you're going to have 2 that are just the regular base factions, which feels a little weird to me. But if that's my biggest complaint, this is still a really good game.
I adore this game, and it's got, I think, 4 or 5 days? It's got till the end of this week from time of release, and I really, really encourage everybody to pick up a copy of this game. It's an awesome card game. I played it with a bunch of people at Geekway, and hopefully y'all are now getting that pinch of regret that you haven't backed it yet. And if you have, thank you so much, because I love Matryoshka, and everybody should play Matryoshka. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, moving on. Other Kickstarter to talk about. Clinic Deluxe Edition coming from Albin Viard and AV Studios. Currently funding at $181,000. It's a $30,000 goal with 1,959 backers. This one also ends this Friday, May 31st, with an estimated delivery of also the end of this year.
Are you sure you didn't just copy the same information twice?
I 100% absolutely promise. I
Cool.
did not copy any information from the previous campaign to this one. So, anyway... Clinic is a hospital management game that's been out of print for a very long time, mainly because it was handmade. LMVR made like 200 or 300 copies of it and released them at Essen. They sold out in like 5 hours, and it's just been, what?
But like a board game, very long time. It was a couple of years ago, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
It just sold out super fast, and it's coming back for this Kickstarter in a big way with lavish production and a little 3-word phrase called Ian O'Toole Art, which is obviously going to turn anybody's head who is excited about board game art right now, especially in the larger Euro space. So it's going to be complete with, I think, a few hundred pieces of wood, and then this expansion box called the Clinic Extension is a box that compiles all of the previous expansion materials ever for the game, also with the same high level of production, great art, all that usual stuff.
Was there that much expansion content for this game that there were only 200 copies of?
Apparently there is a good bit of just random bits and pieces of expansion that's been produced over the years, and it's enough to fill this whole second box of stuff, so I'm not questioning that yet.
Fair enough.
I might question it eventually. But from what I read, it's kind of like if you played like a 2 Point Hospital or Theme Hospital, one of those games, but in a more manageable board game kind of sense, instead of giant, expansive, make hospitals all over the continent kind of thing. But similar kind of patient management, hospital management, hire your doctors, manage your buildings and all that equipment stuff. So I'm excited. This was pretty much a day one back, and I'm super glad right now that I didn't buy the one copy of it that was at the Gaming Hoopla's silent auction, because yes, I saw a real copy of Clinic in the world.
Yeah, and I bet it was more than $59.
Oh yeah. And this one's going to look really dang nice. So yeah, that is Clinic Deluxe Edition. It is up on Kickstarter through the end of this week as well. All right. That's a really big opening segment. We had a lot of big news in there.
Well, no time to think about it. We've got lots of games to talk about.
All right, off to St. Louis.
Want to wear your draft mechanic pride to your local brewery, board game meetup, or board game meetup at a brewery? Check out redbubble.com/people/draft mechanic for t-shirts.
Okay, so by going to St. Louis, I mean metaphorically, because we're not going to go back to St. Louis. That would be way too long, and we don't have time for that in the middle of a podcast episode. So instead, let's just tell you about our experiences at Geekway to the West. Yeah?
Yeah.
So Wednesday, we all showed up at the hotel. By all, I mean you and me. We got to the Embassy Suites, both of us. And one of my favorite things about coming into a con like this a little early, especially when everybody's staying at the same hotel, is that you just end up running into people and you just play games.
Yeah, I definitely ran into Patrick Hillier as I was getting in line to check in and just screamed his name across the lobby. And he didn't notice, but the woman who was checking him into the hotel noticed and, like, goes to him. I could see her gesturing like there's a woman screaming your name over there.
Oh, but that's so fun, be able to show up to a gaming con hotel and literally the second you check in, you meet up with people you know. So after getting checked in and all that, we ended up hanging out with Patrick and his wife Cindy, and we played some games that night. We got to play HexRoller that you talked about last episode. So I finally have played that, and I can definitely say that is a roll and write game in which you write numbers on hexes.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine, right?
It's fine. I finally got to play 6 Nimmt. I have never played 6 Nimmt before.
I still don't believe that's true, because I've played 6 Nimmt at our game nights a couple of times.
I also haven't played just one yet. It's kind of a similar thing. But I actually really like that, and I'm glad that I finally got to play that, so that's going to continue sticking around. We played Pot de Vin, which you found at Geekway last year and became one of our favorites, a little card game.
Yes. Do you want to give some stats on any of this information? We've got HexRoller, which is a 2019 release from Renegade, designed by Rustan Hawkinson. And the art is by Christian Fiore. Mm-hmm. We have 6 Nimmt, which is a 1994 release from Amigo, designed by Wolfgang Kramer, and there's no artist credited. And Pot de Vin is a 2018 release from Thundergriff Games, which is designed by Phil Barros and Varney Marcano, and the art is by Weberson Santiago, Weberson Art, and Luis Francisco. I also got a chance to play a game of Keyforge with Gates, formerly of Floodgate Games, and that was also fun, but if you want our opinions on Keyforge, go listen to episode 95, because they're longer than we have time to put into this episode.
I really enjoyed watching y'all play a game of Keyforge, because it was great to see 2 people play Keyforge competently instead of somebody playing against me, and then me losing very badly.
Someday you'll be good at it.
I don't know why I still enjoy Keyforge so much when I'm so bad at it. Maybe it's because I think the game is good.
You don't have to win to enjoy a game.
Very true. But I just want to do good at Keyforge.
Wow.
All right, so eventually we went to sleep because we got up early that day, because that's what it takes to get anywhere these days. Thursday, getting into Geekway was actually really easy. That was one thing I was really surprised about. The registration line, we didn't go right at open. We were maybe an hour or so later, but it was literally like one person in line in front of us, and we got it, and they're like, here's some games. Here's your badges. Put your ticket in that thing over there for the door prize that you're not going to win, but you think you're going to win for a second.
That being said, I looked out our hotel room window, which actually looked back over the entrance of the convention center, and before we got down there, the line was, as it usually is, out and down to the end of the convention center because they don't let anybody in before check-in starts, obviously. So there was a line if you had gotten there right away. Instead, I made you do an exercise, and then when we got down there, no line.
That's fun. I did my mandated run, and I did it, and I ran, and we did running. And that was good.
Then we played some games we haven't talked about on the podcast already.
What I would say is I think one of the reasons that line is always so long to get that first registration at Geekway is because people are so hungry to get into the Play and Win library. Geekway's Play and Win library is insane if you've never been. They will have maybe 50 or 60 different titles that are in their Play and Win, and they have to have, the publisher has to donate a minimum of 6 copies of each of those. So the 4,000 or so people at Geekway, you got maybe 400, 500 that are going to get to go home with the game that day, and that's like freaking awesome.
And they're also really vigilant about making sure people don't just take those copies out and sit on them. If you've had it for more than, I want to say, like 24 hours, they will start making announcements and try to come find you so that you can get those games back in, because if you're not putting them back into the library, then other people aren't getting a chance to play them and have a chance to win them. So they're really good about making sure that you can actually get to those games. Now, you might have to like sit there and wait a second for somebody to return a copy, but they are going to be cycling regularly.
Yeah, number of things that people are just kind of like camping out in the room waiting for. Teotihuacan was one. I know that a lot of people were jumping on My Little Scythe was another one.
Fuji was very often
Fuji.
out.
Yep, Fuji was out a lot. And the
Fire in the Library was very rarely there as well.
The first game we played, Tiny Towns, was one that was constantly going through. Tiny Towns 2019 released from AEG, 1 to 6 players, 45 to 60 minutes. This is designed by Peter McPherson with art by Matt Paquette and Gong Studios. It is a flip-in-place pattern building and then screwing yourself out of ever putting anything in that corner of your board game.
Wait, how is this a flip-in-place game?
Okay, so we didn't play with that version of it, but there's a version where you have a deck and you flip over the card for what resource is going to be coming up next. We played the aggressive player versus player version.
Oh, did we?
Well, I mean, if I get to decide what good you're taking.
Fair enough. It didn't really feel super aggressive, but let's explain a little bit about how the game plays first. In Tiny Towns, everybody has a tiny town in front of them, which is represented by a 4x4 grid. So you've got 16 available spaces that you're going to be working with for this game.
So tiny.
In the middle, between all the players, there are 6 different buildings that you can build. They are all of different types, and there is a little bit of variety in the different buildings of each type. I think there are 3 or 4 of each type of building that you can select. So there's a little bit of variety there, but you're going to select one of each of the 6 types of buildings, and it will tell you not only the configuration of goods that are required to make the game, and I'll explain that a little bit more in a bit, but also how that building is going to score at the end of the game. There may be a requirement like it needs to have similar buildings of the same type in its row or column. Maybe it needs to be in a specific place in your town, like it only scores points if it's in the corner. Maybe it provides food if it's one of the farming type buildings for other buildings which are in portions of your town that are adjacent to it in some way. So it'll give you all the information about how the building gives you points or resources on the card. There is also a secret card that everybody can choose at the beginning of the game that is a building that only you have, and that if you construct it will give you a special power, but you get that at the beginning of the game and everybody's is different. There are also 4 types of building materials in this game, which you are going to use to build your various buildings. They are, as far as I can tell, blue, gray, brown, and red.
Yeah, probably.
I think they're like brick, glass, stone, and dirt.
Wheat.
Oh,
Wheat's
wheat,
one.
yeah, okay. So they're different colored cubes is what they are. And you are going to be taking them and putting them out onto your tiny town in different Tetris pieces.
Yeah, orientations and stuff.
Grouping. So, maybe a gray next to a yellow and then a blue above a red. And, you have to get the shape that is depicted on the building in order to build it. Once you have placed the resources into your town in the configuration that is required by a building, you're going to take the building from the center and place it onto one of the spaces where the resources were to build that building. So I'm going to have to put the building onto some of the space that I used to build it, meaning that I'm now getting in the way of building something in that space again. So the trick of this game is you need to build all the buildings that you want to get a whole ton of points, but you need to build them in ways that leave you additional room to build other buildings that you need in the locations they need to be built. You're going to keep going until players run out of space to build stuff. And the way you are getting these resources, I didn't actually mention this, the way you're getting these resources is that on a player's turn, they get to pick a type of resource, and all of the players get to put one of that type of resource somewhere into their town. Now, they may be doing it in the same pattern to make the same building, but they may be working on completely different buildings, and depending on what space they have available, they may be able to build completely different buildings. You may have just completely eliminated the possibility that you build a specific type of building based on where you've placed other stuff on previous turns. Mm-hmm. At the end of the game, once everybody has filled up their little tiny towns, you are going to score all of the buildings based on their placement and whether they score or not, what resources they provide to the other buildings, and whoever has the most points from their tiny town is the winner.
The tiniest towner.
I think you also lose points for extra spaces that are left on your board, so you really want to build efficiently.
Mm-hmm. Tiny Towns has been getting a lot of buzz recently, and I understand why. It's a quick play, it's cute, it's colorful, it's easy to teach, it's scalable super well. You know, you can play this 1 to 6, and realistically, you could play it with 100 if you had enough pieces and boards.
But you don't.
You don't. Nobody has that many. I mean, somebody probably has enough copies of Tiny Town out there.
No, what I'm saying is, like, it's not like Welcome to, where you could just keep photocopying that one board. There are actual components that you need to have, and you don't have them.
Very true. But yeah, I like it well enough. I'm glad that there's a lot of variety in the buildings, because I feel like if you just played the same buildings, it would get super stale.
Now,
which also, yeah.
We played this at 2. Mm-hmm. I feel like this probably plays better at more than 2. You've played it before that with more than 2, correct?
I played it at 3. I think I played it at 3 at Hoopla, and that was, it was good. Same kind of thing, you know, everybody's choosing a different thing, and the way we played it, where you're picking the actual resource each turn, I think is also super important, because if you're flipping off the top of the deck and just saying, oh, this is going to be glass turn, it's not as exciting, and you don't really have any kind of agency over it. But when you have the ability to say, well, Danielle's running out of spaces, I'm going to take glass, because none of the buildings she's working on have glass on them, and she's look down her board like, and then,
so I have to put this glass cube now somewhere on my board, and it's taking up space and probably going to give me a negative point because I can't use it at any point. But I'm just like, oh, dag. I should have planned better.
Yeah. So, like, there's that level of strategy in there, and I bet that you could come up with some really interesting combinations of the buildings to get yourself some really cool scoring kind of engine building kind of stuff. But honestly, it's a little lighter than I want to play. I would play it again, but I don't need to have it, you know? Even with, like, game nights, I could see it coming out at game night. I just can't see myself being the person to bring it out at game night.
Having you say that this was the more interesting of the variants sort of solidifies in my mind. It's a fine game. It's not a bad game. I'm not going to be like, oh, I'm never playing that again. But I felt the same way. I didn't feel the need to own it as soon as we finished playing it. Which, if neither of us feels the need to own it, probably says something, because we do like games.
I think it is also one of those games that fits in that gateway space that you and I just don't end up in a lot anymore, which is, again, not any kind of attack on the game, because I think Tiny Towns is a well-designed game. It plays well, it teaches well, and it's fun and has variability in it, but it's just not our particular game at this point. If I want to have a light game, I want to have something light and super elegant, or if I want to have a Euro or some kind of an abstract, I want something a little heavier, meatier, more deeper decisions. So I would encourage everybody to play a game of Tiny Towns, especially if your local con library or your friendly local game store has a copy, because it might be the kind of thing that works perfect for your group, or maybe somebody you're trying to trick into playing more board games.
Don't trick people. It's rude.
I mean, play more board games, though.
But don't trick people.
Just encourage them. Encourage them gently. You should come play this Tiny Town with me. Look, it has a small hammer. You want to play with the small hammer.
I did want to play with the small hammer, yes.
All right, well, that is Tiny Towns.
Next, we got to play Second Chance, which is a 2019 release from Stronghold and Spiel. This plays some players in a few minutes.
I may have phoned it in a little on the stats there.
Just a little bit. This is designed by Uwe Rosenberg, and the art is by Max Prentice, and, because you do the scribbling of the shapes. And the front of this box looks like the video for Take On Me by Aha.
Draw some squares.
But they're not credited in this anywhere, because they shouldn't be.
No.
This is a game of polyominoes, and you're super shocked because it's an Uwe Rosenberg game that came out in like the last 5 years.
Yes, but this time you were flipping cards and filling.
This one actually is a flipping game.
This one is actually 100% a flip and fill Randa Writer style game. In Second Chance, you have a grid in front of you. Stop me if you've heard this one before. You're going to have tetrominoes and you're going to try to fill in your grid. It's a 9x9 grid, and you have a deck of cards that are all sorts of interesting... Oh, sorry, not tetrominoes, polyominoes, because they're all sorts of different sizes from a 1x1 up to like 9 square weird shapednesses. But everybody gets a card to start. There's a set of starting cards that are like 7 square or whatever, and you're like, hey, you have to draw this on your thing now because it's a sheet, and you get... Oh, wait, no, it didn't come with pencils. Or this one... No, this one did not, because you and I had to trade a pen back and forth the entire game.
That is true. They put no pencils in this box.
If you're making a random writer and I gotta write, please give me an instrument to write with. That's just like rule number 4 or something. It's in the top 10 rules of random writers.
One more thing.
So you're going to put this, you're going to draw that first thing on your sheet, and your goal is to fill up your sheet and not have empty spaces, because if you have empty spaces, they are negative points, and least negative score wins, unsurprisingly.
So the highest score wins.
Yeah, okay. So
just like every game.
It is the highest. Not every game. Some have low scores. Cabo has low score. We'll talk about that one later.
Fair
so
enough.
You have the deck of cards that have the tetrominoes and polyominoes. So you have this deck of cards that have the polyominoes. You're going to flip a card over. Everybody's going to be like, oh, where am I going to put this shape? And then you scribble it on there. And you continue to do that until you can't fit them anymore. But wait, here's the catch. If you flip over a card and you can't use it, you get a second chance.
Cool.
Yeah, it's the name of the game. And you get to flip over a card just for yourself, and if you can fit it in, then you don't end yet. No, I'm done. That's the whole thing. Any empty spaces are minus points, and don't have minus points or else.
I didn't.
Yeah. This is as simple as you can get filling in a grid, unless they just like rolled a die and said, hey, fill in 6 blocks.
I mean, I guess they give you a choice because you do flip 2 cards at a time.
Oh, yeah, okay. You do flip. Yeah, you flip 2 cards, you choose which one to do.
It's still not a ton of mechanics.
Yo, we've gone too far. Can we all please just go back to patchwork now? That's kind of how I feel about Second Chance. Or even like Indian Summer, or as we'll talk about at some point, Spring Meadow. Like, those are really interesting variations on polyominoes. I think that they do some really cool things, and the progression of all of those games is really interesting. Second Chance is a game I feel doesn't need to exist.
Yeah, it's the kind of game that you would play on a napkin while you're waiting for your restaurant table to be called.
I would rather play a game of dots, yeah.
Yeah, I don't feel like this game added anything to the gaming conversation. Like, its big deal is that you get to flip over a second card. That's not a deal. That is not a thing that's special and unique. You probably don't need to buy this game.
And I'm hoping that somewhere, like, in translation, it got crossed, because I heard we were getting a patchwork roll and write, and I guess that's what this ended up being. I'm really hoping that there is, somewhere out there, a roll and write or random writer game that does something really exciting with the patchwork mechanics. Like, I want to use time track. I want to use that kind of stuff. I want to use leather patches and buttons, but in a random writer. Let's see if we can make that happen. And not this. No second chance for this game. Ooh,
nice.
Yeah, nailing it with a pun. All right, next one. We've got Kodama Duo, 2018 release from Indie Boards and Cards. This plays exactly 2 players in 40 minutes. Designed by Nick Little and Daniel Solis with art by Kwanchai Moria. This is a game of tree building and symbol stacking, but just for the 2 of us.
Oh my.
Because you've played Kodama in the past. I have not.
I, as it turns out, have only gotten a demo of Kodama, and I don't think it was demoed correctly to me. In Kodama Duo, everybody's going to start with a trunk card, which has a single symbol and a tree that's got some branches coming off of it.
Tree trunk, not car trunk, right?
Yes, a tree trunk. Okay. Why would there be a car trunk?
I don't know. Maybe it's Kodama car
Kodama
spirits.
The car spirits. Yeah, no. This is trees.
I'll come up with a better pun while you're explaining.
Okay. One player is going to take the splitter token, and one player is going to take the chooser token, and they are going to be traded on every turn. The person at the beginning of the turn with the splitter token is going to draw 3 branch cards off the top of the deck, and they're going to divide them into 2 different groups. Now, as you can tell, 3 does not divide evenly into 2, so one of those groups is going to have 1 card, and one of those groups is going to have 2 cards.
This is not a legacy game. Do not tear your tree cards in half.
Please don't. I mean, I guess if you buy it, it's your game.
Do what you want to at that point,
but if you
won't get
got
to
it
play.
from a library, don't tear the tree cards, or if you'd like to ever play it again. Anyway, the person with the chooser token is then going to decide which of those tree branch groups they would like to take. If they take the card that has only 1 card, that is the card that they are going to add to their tree. Obviously. If they take the group that has 2 tree branch cards, they are going to choose one of those 2 cards to add to their tree, and one to go to the discard pile. Then each player is going to take the card that they are adding to their tree, either the one that they've taken or one of the two that they've taken, and they are going to place it on their tree so that the picture of the branch that is on the card lines up with one of the existing branches on the tree. On the first turn, that's going to be one of the ones coming off the trunk. In future turns, that can be pre-existing branch cards, as long as it doesn't overlap more than one branch card. Each of these branch cards has at least 3 symbols of, I believe, the 6 or 7 that are in the game. There's like a firefly, there's a mushroom that's growing off of the tree, there's a cloud, there's a star in the background, flowers on the tree, all these symbols. And you are going to get points for placing that card based on how far back towards the trunk you can count each of the symbols that are on the card you place. So maybe you place a card that has 2 mushrooms on it and a firefly. And then the card before that on that branch has a mushroom and a firefly and some flowers, and the card before that has just a firefly and a bunch of other stuff that's not on any of the cards. In that case, you're going to get 3 points for fireflies, because you can count 3 fireflies back in a straight line of cards, and you're going to get 3 points for the mushrooms, because there were 2 on that first card and 1 on the card before that. And if there's any mushrooms farther down the branch or fireflies farther down the branch, but there's an interruption of that straight line, you don't get to count them. So you want to create these lines of the same symbols going back towards the tree. At the end of every 3 rounds, you are going to have the scoring for that season, at which point you are going to look at the 4 Kodama cards that you received at the beginning of the game. And the Kodama are these tree spirits, and you want to create trees that are nice little homes for them.
Yeah, so cute.
And each of the Kodama have requirements for what they want in their home. So they're going to be essentially major scoring points. So maybe you choose a Kodama from your hand that says you get a point for every instance of a mushroom in your tree. So you're going to get a whole bunch of extra points. Or maybe you get 3 points for every card that connects directly to your tree trunk. And there are all kinds of variety of Kodama. You're not going to use anywhere near all of them in any given game, so there is a good variety of that. You're going to be building slightly different trees. Some of those Kodama cards also say you get points for every instance of a particular symbol on your tree, but you lose points for every instance of that particular symbol in your discard pile. So there is a little bit of an interesting choice when you are taking those cards and discarding them. After you do the Kodama scoring for a season, you're going to flip up the decree for the next season. Each season has a decree, and what it is essentially a tweak to the rules. So maybe you get to place both cards when you pick the double tree branch thing, or, there's 3 different edicts. There's 3 different decrees that you choose from for each season, and it's like a random draw at the beginning of it. You're going to go through all 3 seasons that you play. You play the spring, the summer, and the fall, and whoever has the most points at the end, once they've placed their 3rd Kodama, is the winner of Kodama Duo.
Kodama Duo, is that anything?
No.
Darn it. All right.
That's a car.
Yeah, I was trying to make a good car truck pun for you.
Oh, God,
Does that
no.
work? No?
No.
Oh. Kia Duo?
No.
Okay. Anyway, Kodama Duo was very cute, and I like it. I like the art a lot, and the gameplay is good. I'm wondering if I missed something somewhere, because I felt like I didn't have a hard time but making one really, really long branch.
Well, that had to do with the Kodamas that were in your hand. Like, I had a couple of Kodamas of, I think 2 of my 4, encouraged me to make multiple branches. One said you get points for an instance of every mushroom, or I think it was firefly, within 2 of your trunk. So it behooved me to put a lot of stuff close to the trunk. And one gave me points for each branch card that directly touched my trunk.
Okay.
So in that case, I was trying to make a lot of branches and not just one long branch. But I'm not sure if having those Kodama cards made me less likely to score a large number of points, because I wasn't drawing back those same lines. At the same time, you do get to pick which 3 of the 4 Kodama you have that you use, so I guess I couldn't have used one of them. But, I mean, this is not the kind of game that you're going to sit there and plot over what you're going to do for hours and hours. This is a half-an-hour game.
Yeah, it's light, it's quick. I really do love the I Split You Choose use here in a 2-player game. I think that is the way to do 2-player drafting. It works super well, and I think that's pretty much where the whole game was, is, either you or I looking at the 3 cards that we have and saying, well, Danielle wants this card the most, so if I give her this in the set of 2, that means I get to take one of those little tokens.
Yeah, I didn't actually mention that in the description because it didn't really fit in what I was saying. But I should go back and say, the card that is discarded of the 2 cards that are chosen by the player who takes the 2, there are little tokens which have each of the symbols in the game on them. And you get to, as the player who chose only 1 branch card, take one of the tokens that matches the symbols on the discarded card, and it can either be from the center if it hasn't been placed yet, or it can be from the opponent's tree if it's already on the opponent's tree. And you use that token to cover up one of the existing symbols on your tree, but it doesn't have to be, obviously it doesn't have to be the same symbol because that wouldn't make any sense, but you can use it to sort of extend your line backwards if you want to cover up a symbol on a card that breaks your direct line backwards on that, or just add another 1 to your count when you're scoring them.
Yeah, and I did definitely get a lot of those tokens, mainly just because of the way that the drafting thing works. I really like that mechanic, and I think that's the real shining point in this game. And I think it also produced a lot of really interesting scenarios where one of us had to decide, we were the picker, and I'm like, well, this is obviously set up for me to take this. What can I do with this other set to not give, Danielle the advantage that she wants out of this set? That was the core of the game to me. The tree building was nice, but maybe, again, like you said, it was just the stuff that I was working with that made it kind of like, I'm just going to make one real long arm tree. It's got big old arm.
Yeah, it did. Mm-hmm. This game, again, I agree with you. The I Split You Choose was the meat of this, was the interesting part of it. But again, it was fine. I think we both walked away from this saying, that was a fine game.
Yeah.
But it wasn't, stellar.
Would play again.
Would play again, not running out to buy.
Yeah, exactly. All right, that is Kodama Duo. Danielle, you went back over to the Play and Win after that, picked up this guy.
Yeah, I picked up the River because you had a chance to play it at Whose Turn Is It Anyway in January, and I was sitting there, nervously waiting for Gen Con housing to open because I had the only reasonable time that we had in our group. So you got a chance to play The River, which is a 2018 release from Days of Wonder, which plays 2 to 4 in 30 to 45 minutes, designed by Sebastian Pouchon and Ismael Perrin, and the art is by Andrew Bosley. This is a Days of Wonder weight worker placement game where you're, settling and... What is this sentence?
This sentence is my raw feelings of the River, and I will just come back to that later after I explain it. You can read it while I'm explaining The River.
It's a worker placement game.
It's a worker placement game. So in The River, you have a board in front of you that will allow you to place some tiles on it, and you're going to be able to produce resources on them, and also I guess you have barns on them that hold your goods. But in the center of the table, you got the big main worker placement board, and you're going to each round of the game take your workers, and you're going to, what a surprise, place them on one of the regions. There are different regions that will produce different goods for you. I think it's stone and brick and wood? Yeah, wood.
Yes.
And depending on how many of those symbols you have on your personal tableau is how many of that resource you'll produce. You'll then take those resources and store them in the little barn icons on your tableau. Again, like I said, there's a place where you can get turkeys, I guess. Also, they're a wild good. You're allowed to get 1 turkey if you go there.
Wild turkeys are a thing.
Wild turkeys. Yeah, that's where I went with that one. There's another section where you can acquire new land tiles to place into your personal tableau that will give you different production or different barns or different endgame scoring, or maybe it just it generates resources for you every round, which is cool, I guess. And they also come in different landscapes, so that as you are placing them on your board, if you make columns of them, you get extra victory points at the end of the game.
Columns of the same types of landscape.
Yeah, same type of landscape. On the other side of the big worker placement board are some building cards that you are going to build with the resources you've collected in this game, and not turkeys. I guess you can use the turkey to build a house, which is weird. Don't think about that much.
You just smash up the turkey between some stones.
I guess it's the glue that holds us together in the wild frontiers.
Turkeys are the glue that holds us together.
So you can choose to reserve a card a la Splendor and then go to the build a building spot and build it for 1 less resource if you want, or you can just build it outright. The good thing there is that those things are A, worth points, and B, are part of the end game or the timer of the end game, and C, also after you build 2 out of your 4 or 5 buildings, depending on player count, you will get an additional worker. This is good because in worker placement games, you probably want more workers to place in more places.
Especially because in this game, you're going to be losing workers as well.
Yes, as you are placing tiles onto your personal tableau, following the river, the titular river is on your personal player board. It's going to zigzag back and forth, once to the right, once to the left, and then once back to the right.
That is how zigzagging works,
Yeah, I
yes.
just wanted to give everybody a feeling for how many zigs. It's 2 zigs, 1 zag. And 4 tiles wide, 3 rows tall. And so anyway, as you place tiles onto your river, you're going to fill up those spaces, obviously. And as you go more and more tiles down the river, people are just going to settle. You're just going to have workers, and they're just going to be like, I guess I'm going to just stay here. I don't want to go any further on this river.
This far, no farther.
Yeah, and you just you lay them down on your tableau board, and they're just laying there in a city. Like a farmer that doesn't have anything to farm in Carcassonne. This is not a Carcassonne game, but oh boy, we got some Carcassones for you later. Anyway, the game goes until you are done, either by somebody builds all their buildings or somebody builds all of their tiles.
Then you finish out to equal play turns, right?
Finish out, yeah. So anyway, the fun note that I wrote in the notes for this that Danielle got stumbled by, the river, it's a Days of Wonder Wait worker placement game where you're like, I don't know, settling. I mean, playing this game felt like I was settling for what to do for the next 30 minutes. Savage. This is how I feel about the river, which is a bummer because Days of Wonder has produced such great, awesome stuff. But again, maybe this is, I don't want to play gateway games anymore, but at the same time, I feel like there are way better worker placement gateway games out there.
And like many worker placement games, this is not great at 2.
Oh, true. Very true. Very true.
Because you don't really get in the way of each other as much. Now, you had played this with 4 before. Was it better at 4?
Nah, it's still just kind of exists no matter what. And that's kind of a bummer because, again, I wanted this game to be really cool. It's so pretty. And there are some really interesting decisions in here. I love the fact that as you're taking tiles onto your personal tableau, you have to kind of make the decision of, am I going to take this now? It's going to cover over this stone symbol. What's my move? Because do I need stone to build the next building? And then is this going to mess up my adjacency or my lines of the same kind of stuff? There is an action that you can take to move tiles on your board, but do I want to spend a whole worker moving this person just to get possibly 3 and or 6 points by getting this vertical column?
You probably do.
The answer is yes, because you don't have a whole lot of points. But it's like, it's the gatewayest of gateway worker placements to me, and that's just kind of where I fell on it after 2 plays.
Okay.
What did you think about this?
I agree. Like, I've honestly can't remember the last Days of Wonder game that I was absolutely wowed by.
5 Tribes, pretty much?
5 Tribes, which was at this point 2 or 3 games ago.
It's been a while.
Yeah, and there's not a ton before that I'm like, oh, I need to play those all the time anymore. Mm-hmm. Not to say that they're bad games, they're just not games that I want to play. And this sort of falls into that. It's a little too light and a little too simple of what it is for me to want to play it. It wasn't bad in any way. Yeah. It was fine. It worked. You did feel like you were improving your tableau when you were placing those landscape tiles on it. They were generally better than the nothing or the 1 resource that you were covering up. I did feel like I was, working towards building the buildings as I was collecting the resources, and that there was a reasonable decision as to whether I was going to reserve a card now so that you couldn't get it, and also so that I could build it for 1 resource less, or whether I was just going to wait and spend only 1 action instead of 2 to build it directly out of the trade row, or whatever they call it in this game. It was fine, but it's not knocking my socks off.
You don't wear socks often.
That's true, but it's a turn of phrase.
All right, well, that is the river. It might be a thing you have fun with, and that's totally fine, but I am ready to flow on.
Yeah, and it might sound like we're kind of down on a lot of these things, but that's kind of the fun of something like Geekway. You can take stuff out of the library being like, I wouldn't necessarily buy this game, but let me give it a shot. I might be surprised, and we will definitely talk about some games that surprised us at some point in this episode. But, these were not them, and that's the fun of something like this with such an awesome play and win and regular library where you can just play stuff that is not necessarily what you would normally immediately go out and buy.
Yeah. So rounding out Thursday, we continued to, hang out, talk to a lot of people. We played Blue Lagoon out of the library, which we're not going to talk about yet because we are going to probably be reviewing that next episode.
Yeah.
I'll just leave it at that for now. We also got to play the new game coming from Green Couch Games called Darwinauts, tile placement and kind of a resource collection, and also discovering of crazy species. The art by Vincent Dutrait is amazing.
There was a turtle with like spikes where there shouldn't normally be spikes on a turtle.
But he came up with so many creatures just out of his mind. Vincent Dutrait's mind.
That's what artists do, babe.
It is his job. But, like, it's really... And the game itself is also really awesome. This is coming from Chris Bryan is the designer. And this one is going to be launching on Kickstarter at the end of June, I think right after Origins. So we'll probably talk about this in a few episodes again. But I wanted to mention that we had a chance to play that. And we floated around a lot until we had the Geekway bottle share with the Mile High Game guys on Thursday night. And, again, thank you so much to all of you who came out. That was... absolutely insane. We had probably 40, 50, maybe 300 people show up to that thing.
Not 300.
Maybe not 300, but it felt like that.
And we did talk to somebody who was in charge of event planning, and they agreed that we probably need a larger space next year. So that is a good thing, because that room was very packed.
Yes.
I was about to say the normal phrase I use for very packed, but this is a nice, friendly show, right?
Yes. But it was so cool to see so many people that came to the smaller bottle share last year come back again. And I just really want to give a heartfelt thanks to everybody who came out to the bottle share and hung out with us, played games with us, and all that usual stuff.
It's not in the notes, but I do want to say at the bottle share, I did get a chance to play 2 games.
Oh, yeah.
I got to play Ganshon Clever, or I guess, no, it was Doppelt So Clever, with Alex from Grey Fox Games and also the Dukes of... I'm sorry, Monochromatic Wolf Games.
Monochromatic Wolf.
And also the Dukes of Dice, and Cassidy, formerly of Board Game Blitz, I think.
And just all around awesome
of the Shuffle. And and one of her friends. So we got to play a game of that. It is still awesome and fun. We talked about it in our Whose Turn Is It Anyway episode, if you want to go back to January and listen to that. And I also got to play a game, and you played this with us, the Magnificent Race.
Oh, yeah. Patrick Hillier brought this old classic Magnificent Race game.
Yeah, it is a game that he got a chance to play at KitchCon this past year, and immediately went out and bought off of eBay, and it turns out he was like bidding against somebody else who played it at KitchCon this year.
That's hilarious.
And it is essentially a roulette-based roll and move game. So you have 4 different vehicles, and you are moving around this very 1970s Parker Brothers looking board with all of the brightest colors. And you are having multiple races, and you are racing your different vehicles, some of which may have advantage cards on them, and you are putting marbles into this little roulette wheel, and whichever marble ends up in the divot in the middle is the winner of the race. And you're going to keep going until somebody reaches the end of the race. It is not the most like mechanically deep game ever, but for a roll and move game, and honestly for just like we're sitting around being ridiculous in a room full of too many people, it was a fun game.
It was exceptionally goofy.
I'm not going to go on eBay and buy a copy of it, but if Patrick brings it to another convention, I will certainly play it again.
Yes, and obviously at this point we had been hanging out with the Mile High Game guys for a while, or at least Jeff and Zach were able to make it out this year. Adrian did not get to attend Geekway this year, but we played a lot of stuff with Jeff and Zach throughout the weekend, and boy did their team show up in force as well. The whole Colorado contingent of people showing up at the bottle share brought infinity amount of epic beer, I'm pretty sure.
Well, yes, but they also, we saw them many other times, including Blue...
Oh yeah, we played Blue Lagoon with Jeff. Right.
Yeah, we did get to do that, and many other games that we will talk about later. I don't know if you have Matryoshka on here, but you played Matryoshka with Jeff as well.
By the way, if you're not already listening to the Mile High Game guys, and you're okay with a few swear words here and there, super highly recommend it. They put out 2 podcasts a week, which is absolutely bonkers.
Yeah, and they're both full-length podcasts, so if you have a lot of time you need to kill, that is a way to do it. All
right, well, eventually after that, we all went to sleep after a ridiculous bottle share, and that seems as good a time as any to take a break and maybe go to an advertisement bump. Yes, perhaps.
For a company I might have mentioned a minute ago.
You know, they do pay us. We are allowed to say Grey Fox Games. Quality games,
true.
Cleverly crafted.
They pay Alex too, but he's not allowed to say it.
All right, we'll be right back.
We would like to give a huge thanks to our sponsors, Grey Fox Games, in this, our 100th episode. From Gunnar the Viking's trip to Mars to discussing our moon goals, we've covered a lot of awesome thematic games over the episodes.
Not only have we had a lot of fun talking about Grey Fox Games, we've had fun rebuilding lost mechanical wonders in City of Gears, deducing who killed who with a venomous scorpion and left vegetables behind in Deception, Murder in Hong Kong, and drawn perfect rows of square lettuce with Pip the Pig in Harvest Dice.
And the future looks just as bright, with Viking-style ransacking and pillaging in Reavers of Midgard, or two-player asymmetric card maneuvering in War of the Worlds: The New Wave.
To stay in the loop with what's coming from our monochromatic pals, sign up for their newsletter at greyfoxgames.com and follow them on Twitter at greyfoxgames as well.
Hopefully, we'll also learn more about their moon goals there.
And if Gunnar will ever return from Mars.
Nope.
Grey Fox Games. Quality games, cleverly crafted.
So, beginning of Thursday, we spent a lot of our time, obviously, in the Play and Win library because there's a bunch of games we hadn't had a chance to play. But the other room next to it at Geekway to the West has, well, let's just say quite the library.
Yes.
Yes. And last year, roughly around this time, we started something that we have ended up dubbing the Carcassonne. And it started because the Geekway library has a copy of Carcassonne, the city.
I'm sorry, we call it what?
The Carcassonne! I'm saving it.
Oh.
Don't worry, it's coming.
Okay.
Carcassonne. Anyway, this year, we went in there kind of intending to just pay homage... Homage? To pay homage to the Carcassonne, the city copy there. So I walked by and I waved at it mentally. Not actually, physically. I guess maybe I probably waved at it physically. Like, hey, Carcassonne, the city, how you doing?
In case anybody was wondering if my husband is a weirdo.
You know by now. But yeah, I also took a second to look around because I figured if anywhere, this is going to be the place that we're going to find Carcassonnes that we can't usually get into the zone.
And did we find them?
Yes, you took some pictures on the internet, and we'll probably post them in the show notes here, of how many different Carcassonnes do exist in the Geekway to the West Carcassonne.
I believe the answer is 9.
Infinity.
9.
9, yeah. So Carcassonne, the city, the castle, Hunters and Gatherers, and like the really good art version was there. We saw South Seas. We saw some other ones. We saw Basic.
Safari was there.
Yes. We did
Star Wars.
Oh, Star Carcassonne was in there, right? And we did see, obviously, we're going to be talking about a new World, a Carcassonne game, and are on tap later on. But we also got one that we kind of never even thought we'd need to put in here, but we're going to go to the Carcassonne twice this episode. Because for some reason...
1.5 times, really.
Yeah, this is going to be a real quick one. For some reason, we decided we needed to play Carcassonne Winter Edition. Yes.
Because it's a game that is a Carcassonne game, and we wanted to play all the Carcassonnes, so we're going to play this one.
So, Carcassonne Winter Edition 2012, released from Z-Man Games, 2 to 5 players, 40 minutes, designed by Klaus Jürgen Verda, with art by Ann Patsky. This is a game of Carcassonne, but bright white, because it snowed in Carcassonne. There is literally no other difference in Carcassonne Winter Edition other than the art. I was really hoping that there was just like, oh, all of the monasteries are the snowball fights now, yay! But no, there's literally zero difference between Carcassonne and Carcassonne Winter Edition. So
just winter.
Yeah. The art's really pretty.
Yeah.
I'll give it that. The snow is great. There's a lot of cute little Easter eggs here and there in the art. We played with Alex from Grey Fox, and yep, we played Carcassonne Winter Edition.
It is exactly the same as regular Carcassonne. If you prefer winter to not winter, get this one.
But like, I can't even recommend it in that regard because
you can't add it with the expansions.
You can add nothing to it, or I guess you could.
I mean, it would look real weird.
Real dumb. You could do it if you want, and I'm sure some people out there are doing it because they're just like, man, I'm going to put every Carcassonne into the one bag together, and we're going to do all the drawing of tiles we can.
It's Carcassonne Climate Change Edition.
Yeah, play it at a con, and only if you really want to play base Carcassonne. Anyway, that was Carcassonne Winter Edition. Moving on.
Next, we got to play Ginkopolis, which is a 2012 release from Z-Man Games, which plays 1 to 5 players in about 45 minutes. The designer is Xavier Georges, and the artist is Gail Lenorian. This is a game of tile placement, territory control, engine building, and being sad because you can't have this game.
Yeah, unlike Carcassonne Winter Edition, 2012 release from Z-Man Games, or actually I guess kind of like that, these games were never reprinted from 2012 Z-Man Games. Yeah, sure, there's the connection. Great link, Jake. You did a good job with that one. This is one that I really wanted to get played at Geekway because I've heard so much about this game from so many people over the years, and there are 2 copies in the Geekway library.
Are there?
Yes, of which we played neither.
Yeah, I was going to say, I never saw it in the library.
Ran into a friend of the show, Chris McGowan, who I actually did not have a chance to run into at the Gaming Hoopla. We planned to meet up, but it just never happened. But he had Ginkopolis, and we had played New World with him, and we're just kind of sitting there at the end of it. He's like, you want to play Ginkopolis? I'm like, Yes, sir. Yes, I do. And he says, I always carry it with me just in case.
Because he knows people love this game.
So we got to play Ginkopolis, and I'm so excited about this. It is a tile laying and area control game where you are also going to be building up instead of, or in addition to building out.
Yes.
So basically, you have three different kinds of tiles. You have ones that will generate columns, you'll have ones that will generate victory points, and you'll have ones that will generate tiles, more tiles for you. You are going to, on your turn, have a hand of cards. You're going to select a card to play either by itself or with a tile, and depending on your combination of stuff, you're either going to build the world up or out, this set of tiles. The tiles are numbered 1 through 20 in each of those three different, I guess, suits, if you want to call them that. And,
red, yellow, and blue.
Yeah, and building up on top of other tiles, you will have to spend more of your columns if you want to go up, go up higher in height, and also spend it if you're going to change the suit or decrease the number. Building up in number is free. Building the same color is free. Building up more and more levels obviously costs a certain number of these resources. You also have the option to build out as well. There are some little letter tokens around the outside of the 3x3 square of tiles you start with. And if you have that letter card, you can place your tile on that letter and slide it out. And this is all in service of you getting your columns, your little resource columns, out into the board into districts of the same kind of neighborhood tile. You're basically forming neighborhoods and districts and stuff like that with all this future Ginkgo biloba world kind of thing. Yeah.
And the neighborhoods are groups of contiguous same color tiles that are more than a single tile. So 2 or more blue tiles touching each other is a blue neighborhood.
So your goal is, by the end of the game, to develop an engine of kind of power cards based on the cards that you are getting by covering over previous buildings. When you cover over a previous building, you get that card's card into your personal tableau, and they have things that, like, anytime you build a tile, you get to get a free column, or, every time you draw or play a card for just the card, you get bonuses, stuff like that. So you're doing this engine building while you're also building up the city, and that kind of has this really awesome synergy like that. And the goal is at the end to have the most territory control in addition to victory points that you've accrued throughout the game. The territory control, like you said, is in the districts of spaces of the same type that are more than one tile. You're going to count whoever has the most columns or little resource barrels or whatever they are in that particular district. If there's a tie, it goes to the highest tile, and then it goes to the highest number in that particular tie there. But it's kind of a base level understanding of it. I really would love to play this game more to understand more about the way that the cards and stuff work together. But I can understand why people are all over this game.
Yeah, this is 3 solid mechanisms that were fused together in a really excellent way. It wasn't just like bolting stuff on. You've got your engine building that you are doing in your personal card tableau. You've got the area control on the neighborhood, and you have drafting because you are taking each hand and taking not only what you want, but making sure you're not passing off to the next person, something that's going to be super valuable for them. So it is really a nice integration of 3 really strong mechanics, at least for us, really strong mechanics. We love engine building and drafting, and I know you're a fan of area control. I'm hit or miss with it.
Like in this kind of area control where it's not a rolling dice and, weapon cards.
I very much enjoyed this game as well.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying, like, historically, you've always liked area control more than I have. This game worked really well. And when Chris started explaining it to us, he said, this is not going to make sense when I explain it to you, but do it once or twice and you're going to get it and it will make total sense. And that was very accurate. Like, I'm listening to him explain to me what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm like, this is going to go poorly for me. But then, we got a turn or 2 into it, and I was like, oh, I see what I'm supposed to be doing, and I like what I'm supposed to be doing. And we both lost handily to Chris because he's played this before, and he knew what he was doing, and he knew how he should be playing to win. But I think even in rather sound defeat, we were both excited to get another play of this game at some point, hopefully. Whenever we get a chance to.
Hopefully earlier than next year at Geekway, especially because Geekway moved to June.
Whatever.
But yeah, like, wow, I understand why people are all about this game, and I'm all about this game now, and I'm really sad that I can't have a copy of this game. I'm sure that I could get one off the Geek Market, but I also I'm not willing to spend that money. I think it's like you can get it for like $100.
At least.
And that's more than I am willing to spend for this game, and pretty much any kind of game at this point, unless it's enormous.
Yeah, I was gonna say you did just recommend the
I
Clinic
did just, yeah,
with
okay.
expansion
True,
for
true,
$100.
But at the same time, when I see a game like Clinic getting reissued on Kickstarter, or Glenmore just happened, these are games that have been out of
Glenmore
print
2.
for a very long time. And it makes me hopeful that at some point somebody's going to get the rights to Ginkopolis and make a new print run of this. Our friends over at Elf Creek Games are doing Atlantis Rising right now, and that's a game that was a Z-Man 2012-ish release that kind of just disappeared. But I'm sure somebody out there is looking into this because this game has got a lot of fans, and I know there's a lot of people that would line up day one to get a copy of a new edition of Ginkopolis, and I'm one of them.
So if you're keeping track, that is 5 games that you can probably buy that we have said you probably shouldn't buy, and 1 game that you can't buy that we have said you probably should play and that we would like to buy. We are so helpful this episode.
Doing our best. All right, moving right along. We actually, I'm going to go back in time here. In addition to playing Carcassonne with Alex, we played Men at Work, a 2019 release from Pretzel Games that plays 2 to 5 players in 30 to 45 minutes. This is designed by Rena Modal, with art by Chris Quilliams, and is a game of stacking big burly dudes onto beams and girders and vice versa.
Yeah, in Men at Work, you are going to start with 3 support wooden pieces. I mean, they're just little prisms, for lack of a better word. And there are a couple of different types of wooden pieces that are in this game. If you've played any of the other like original edition pretzel games, you know how they come with lots of wooden pieces in them? This one is no different.
Yes.
You've got long beams, which are, I'm going to say like 8-10 inch long pieces of little wood, and
Girders are the big ones.
Sorry, girders are the longer ones.
Very
Beams are about the length of a toothpick, and they are, you know, just
1.1 millimeters square.
Sure.
Yeah, I made that number up.
Yeah, they're smaller. You've got little workers, which are larger than meeples, but smaller than troll dolls.
And wearing hard hats.
And they have 2 little arms that you can stack stuff on. You've got bricks, which are about the size of bricks in any resource management game. And you are going to be...
Not in the real-life resource management game of life.
No, they're not the size of
not
actual
real
bricks.
Oh.
You're going to, on your turn, flip over a card, and the back of the previous card is going to tell you what type of wooden piece you're placing, whether it is a worker or a girder, and the color is going to tell you what color of that piece you're placing, and then there will be a rule as to how you have to place it on the card you just flipped over. So it may say, like, place a black or a purple beam, and you need to do it so that it forms the highest point in the structure. Or it may be like, place a worker on an orange or a black beam, but the worker has to be holding 2 bricks. So you have to balance the little bricks on his arm, and you have to place them into your structure. If anything falls, you have had a safety accident, and you remove one of your safety certificates. When all of your safety certificates have been removed from the game, you are no longer a licensed contractor, I guess, and you are out of the game. About 4 or 5 turns into the game, you will start getting additional, like, Worker of the Month benefits if you, when you place your pieces into the structure, form a new highest point in your structure, you will get a Worker of the Month certificate, and if you are not eliminated at the end of the game, you get extra points for having Worker of the Month certificates. Whoever has the most Worker of the Month certificates and safety certificates left at the end of the game is the winner.
I kind of felt like this is what happens if you take junk art and Catch the Moon and put them together, but make the pieces too slippery, you know?
I guess.
Like,
both of those games are better than this game.
yeah, absolutely. And I'm a little bummed because I really enjoy Pretzel Games. I like their line, and the component quality is something I've always raved about with junk art. The pieces are awesome. With Flick 'em Up, the pieces are so freaking good. There's so much like quality cardboard and wood in those boxes. And when they were putting out Men at Work, I noticed that they weren't going to do this one in the, you know, the wooden box with the sliding top. And I was like, oh, okay, well, maybe they're just doing that to save cost. I mean, this is only $50 MSRP, $35 on your local game store or online website. But like, I just kind of felt like the quality of pieces wasn't as good. And in a game where you're doing a lot of dexterity stacking, to have pieces slippery is not going to work. And that was my biggest frustration with it.
I don't necessarily agree with that. I saw nothing wrong with the pieces. They were just wooden pieces that were painted. They didn't feel any more slippery than any other painted wooden piece. I mean, I was able to stack them. You were having some trouble.
I had some trouble.
I just don't feel like there was enough to this game to warrant even at the $35 price point, like, we played it once and it was a fun experience to play once. And mostly we were laughing at, like, oh, you just knocked 6 beams and knocked 4 workers off girders and, bricks fell everywhere. Oh, you've got to turn in one of your safety certificates. It's an accident if one person falls. It's also an accident if 7 people fall, Like, that joke is only funny maybe once.
Yeah.
It's not even really funny once.
I think it's funny every time, but then I like puns. Yes.
The point is, like, I wouldn't go back to playing this game over and over and over again. It's the dexterity element of it it's fine. It's not the hardest thing in the world to do. Sometimes you just flip a card and you're like, I can't do that. I'm going to have a construction accident upon this turn because I don't have a place to put that. And I guess if you played this enough, you would learn how to build your structure so that you always had available points. But that doesn't sound fun.
Yeah.
That sounds like making this game, like, strategic and working. Yeah.
I mean, again, that's why I like Catch the Moon so much. It does a similar kind of stacking things without anything collapsing kind of gameplay dexterity thing, but it's a very simple rule set. It doesn't overcomplicate it. And honestly, the ladders are just really good quality, and I feel like they do a great job stacking. One thing I will say about Men at Work, we played with just the base set of components. We didn't use the additional tower crane, which looked like it was actually a pretty cool component. It's this kind of large cardboard construction crane looking thing that you stand up in the center of the site, and you can use that to balance your pieces off of as you grow. So it gives you another thing to stand pieces on, giving you more opportunities to, build your structure. I felt like, especially as stuff got knocked off with Men at Work, and we're playing with the, your 3 support things, and maybe there are like 1 or 2 girders left, you look at the thing and you're like, well, I guess I'm just going to put this right across the middle, and it's not as exciting. Or especially if you have a worker where you're just like, I have to put it on the white thing, but this one's balanced really weird, and somebody's already at the fulcrum, so I'm going to have a safety accident no matter what. Those things frustrated me, and I would love to try this again. On a more stable table, and also with that construction crane, to see how that changes it for me.
I'm just going to go ahead and say, if you want to play this game, just don't play Catch the Moon instead.
Yeah, play Catch the Moon. Play Junk Art. I think Junk Art has a lot more variety in terms of the tons of different game modes. And I'm good. I'm happy in a way that we don't own this game because it doesn't mess up the perfect pair of boxes that I already have from Junk Art and flick them up.
So that is now 6 games that you can buy that we are saying you shouldn't, and 1 game that you can't buy that we said you should.
I really wish you wouldn't talk about it in this way. I think everybody should play Men at Work because I have a feeling a lot of people are going to enjoy it a lot. For my money, Catch the Moon is a game I prefer.
Agreed.
Yes. We also got to play a few other rando games throughout Friday. We got to get heavy and played Agra. Yes. We played Agra twice this year, and it's only May.
Yeah,
that's so freaking amped about that right now.
Yeah.
So we got to show Gates that one, and she dug it as well. I will always play Agra at a convention if you want to play Agra.
Can you buy Agra now?
You can absolutely buy Agra.
So we found one that you can buy, and we say you should.
Go get Agra. And then we did a lot of other stuff on Friday. We went to get chicken that day. Friday was going to get Southern Day, wasn't it?
No.
Was that Saturday?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, we ate chicken at some point this weekend. If you're in St. Louis, go to Southern. It's delicious.
Yes. After that, we actually got a chance to play Gil Hova's new storytelling game that he had announced just like days before and said, hey, I'm bringing it to Geekway. And you had sent him an email and been like, we will play test that game.
I will literally at all times play test something that Gil Hova is doing.
I agree, and I don't really want to talk much more about it because I know his games change a lot in their development, and this one was very fresh. He said it was like the 4th or 5th play that had ever gone on of this game. So I don't want to talk about it because it's probably not going to be what it is at the end, but having played it now, I'm very excited to see what it becomes because it was good in our play of it in its raw state.
I do also want to comment that in one of my proudest moments in gaming history, I made a pun with a 2-hour setup.
You did make a 2-hour setup pun that nobody saw coming.
Yes. One of the characters' name was Denny, and we were at a diner, and nobody caught on till the very end of the game, and I freaking love it. I am so happy about this.
Yeah, it's the only time anybody's been happy about Denny's.
Yeah, true. That is very true. But yeah, keep an eye on Gil Hova's weird stories. I'm sure we'll talk about it again in the future. So what does that bring our count to as games you can't buy? Because you can't buy that yet, but you can buy it someday in the future.
7 games you can't buy. No, sorry, 2 games you can't buy that we were very excited about.
All right.
6 games that you can buy that we're not excited about. And 1 game that you can buy and we are excited about.
Oh, and then finally, the very last thing we checked out of the games library was Fuji, a 2018 release from Spiel, 2 to 4 players, 30 to 45 minutes, designed by Wolfgang Warsch, with art by Weberson Santiago. I love it when his name comes up in the arts.
Yeah, I mean, we played this essentially because it had Weberson art. I was like, I need to play this game because I love Weberson art.
And this is a cooperative push-your-luck dice game, but a volcano is going to get you.
Yeah, if you had told me that there is a game called Fuji, I would not have assumed it was about escaping an erupting volcano. But that is the plot of the game. In this game, you are going to draw a card at the beginning and you are going to set up a path of cards based on the map that you've drawn. Each of the players is going to have a pawn, and if you are playing with only 2 players, there's a dummy pawn that you are also trying to move along. And you're all trying to get to the safe village, which is at the far end of the volcano map. So you're trying to move through this whole map and get to the village. Once everybody's pawns are on the village cards, then you have won the game. If you get, swallowed up into the lava, if anybody gets swallowed up into the lava, you are going to lose the game. Now, the way you move through this map is you are going to roll your dice, and you are trying to have the highest value of pips on the dice that are specified by the card you would like to move to of anybody who is playing the game. So if you're playing a 2-player game, you want to have the highest value on the card that you are looking to move to of the 2 players and the dummy player. Or if you're playing a 4-player game, of the 4 actual human players, you're trying to have the highest value of the requirement on the card you're trying to move to. Now, everybody can choose to move to a different card. In fact, I would highly recommend it because if you're both trying to move to the same card, you can't both get there because one of you will not have the higher number. That would be silly.
You did bad.
The requirements are something like, of pink or blue dice of an even value. Or there are 3 different colors of dice. There are pink, blue, and yellow. So you may be rolling for just pink or blue dice. You want to have the highest value of pink or blue dice, or you want to have the highest value of odd numbered dice, or there's all kinds of combinations. But everybody is going to select which card they would like to move to. The trick is that when you are discussing what you've rolled, you can't specify exact numbers and you can't say exact values. So I can't be like, I have a lot of 3s. Or you can't say, I have an above average value on my pink dice. You can't specify that. You have to speak very vaguely. So maybe I say to Jake, I'd like to move to this card. I think I have a very good chance of moving to this card. And all he can kind of say back to me is like, well, I'm not strong in that. So maybe you do. But you have to find ways to talk around what you're actually trying to discuss. And obviously you could probably create some kind of weird code to do this, but don't do that. That takes the fun out of it. Then after you've decided where you're going to go, you have the option to re-roll your dice, which may make you stronger in the thing that you'd like to do, but it also may completely bone over the other person because you may roll into a strong position for the card that they were looking to go to. Especially if you're playing with a bunch of players. I could see that happening quite a bit. Mm-hmm. So if you choose to re-roll, and you have the option to re-roll a number of times based on where you're going and each of your player powers, once you've done all that, you will remove the screens from in front of your dice and you will reveal what values you have. If you have the highest pip value on the card that you're looking to move to, congratulations, you get to move there. If you have not the highest value, you stay where you are. That's not great, because the lava's coming to get you. After you determine whether or not you move, if you've moved at all, you're going to look at how much higher your value was than everybody else's value. And depending on how much higher it is, you are going to take a certain number of stress. After you accumulate a certain number of stress, you're going to take an injury, which is going to hinder your ability to use equipment or possibly your ability to reroll. It may take away your special individual player ability. And the more stress you accrue throughout the game, it never goes away. So you may incur more than one injury throughout the game, restricting your abilities even more. If you don't move at all, you take the maximum number of stress based on the mode that you're playing in, the easiest mode, the harder mode, or there are, I think, 4 levels. And you don't get to move, which is the worst part, because at the end of each round, the lava is going to advance into every card which is adjacent to a card that currently has lava. Now, at the beginning of the game, that may just be one card. It may only have one path that it can go. But as you get towards the middle of all of the maps, there are multiple cards which are adjacent, which means there are going to be multiple cards that the lava will feed off of in the future. And the way the maps are built, there are some bottleneck points, but if you get to a point where you are repeatedly not moving, you are going to get swallowed up in that lava and everybody's going to lose the game. You can't move over the lava either, so you don't want to get caught in like a weird arm of the map at any point. If everybody gets to the village tiles before they get eaten by lava, congratulations, you win.
Hooray.
If anybody gets eaten by the lava, congratulations, you lose.
Wait, congratulations?
You played a game still.
You did get to play a game.
And you didn't actually get eaten by lava.
That's true. This is just a metaphor for lava. I feel like Wolfgang Warsch's entire play space right now is restricting information between players. Obviously he did the mind, and restricting information with yourself if you're playing a competitive game. Like in Quacks of Quedlinburg, you obviously can't see what's in your bag.
Yeah, it's a bit of a stretch, but I get what you're going at with
but
there.
Like it's interesting, and I'm interested to see how much he's able to do with the obfuscation mechanic, as I'm going to now call it, because I've decided so.
Cool.
But like, it's really interesting to not be able to talk about what you have in a game like this, especially when you throw in that probability of, I might re-roll some of these dice and it could go completely haywire.
Yeah, and you can look at your dice and see, because not all of the dice have the same distribution of color and number pairings. So there are, I think, 3 different distributions on the dice where, the 3 on one die might be yellow, the 3 on another die might be blue, and the 3 on another die might be pink. So if I'm keeping certain dice, I can look at it and be like, okay,
that knocks out red 4s.
Yeah, there is a chance that I can't roll even numbers that are also yellow on this die, so that may affect how much I'm going to get in the way of the other player just based on which dice I'm re-rolling. Mm-hmm. But there's also a chance that you're going to end up re-rolling dice that are just, they have a potential to get in the way of another player. Mm-hmm. And there are moments in this game where you have to decide, well, is it more important for me to move or is it more important for you to move? Because I'm farther away from the lava. If I don't move this turn, I'll have another chance on the next turn. If you don't move this turn, you're getting eaten. We need to make sure you can get to a card that you will be able to move to.
Yeah.
And you can only move so far. You can only move 3 spaces, up to 3 spaces in a turn. So if the cards between you and 3 spaces from you don't really work with what you rolled, you're going to need to take that chance and reroll.
I was also really surprised how well this game worked with 2. At 2 players, you create a third dummy player where each of you sees half of the dice. So I could see 3 and you could see the other 3. And obviously that's another character you have to be concerned about moving, but you can only know really about half as well as they're going to do. So that made it really interesting to say, okay, well, I only have half the information on this character. I have all my information. Do you think that you're going to be taking this spot? And we have to constantly be thinking, okay, what are the odds that this character's other 3 dice are the 3 are going to, interfere with these 2 players? It was really cool seeing partial information of 2 players.
Some of the more frustrating moments as well were like, I was looking at my dice and I was like, oh, I can totally get to this card with what I've rolled. I think I have a strong position for that. And I'm looking at the dummy player's dice that I got to roll, the 3 I got to roll, and be like, oh, the dummy player can go to this other, and it would be really good if he went to this card and I went to this other card and I run that by you and you're like, no, I can't help with you at all on that. Or my dice get in the way of him going to that and you going to that. So there is certainly an interesting push and pull of what each player wants the dummy player to do in a 2-player game. So much so that I think this is one of the rare instances where a dummy player actually works in a game. Usually they're just annoying.
Mm-hmm. I was a little bummed that once you get to a character to the end, that they still have to roll. But I mean, it makes sense. It makes the game more challenging. That character still has to get in the way of other players. But obviously, that was what stopped us from winning. And just because we had to have somebody move and just couldn't move into the places we needed. So that's a silly, dumb complaint. But I just really wanted to win that game. We were so close. I think that's what it is.
Fair enough. We were very close, but couldn't quite escape you can never escape the lava, as it turns out.
But I gotta say, I really enjoyed A Play of Fuji. I want to play it more. I'm not about to go out and get it immediately, but it's the kind of game that I want to play again, and I want to try it a few different player counts to really get a feel for how that's going to work. With 3 or 4 players, the different player powers and equipment you pick up probably have a lot of interesting interactions and a lot of interesting ways to manipulate the dice. So, yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm not going to rush out and get it, but I do want to play this again. I've been thinking about it a little bit since Geekway.
I mean, also, if you do want to rush out and get it, it's less than $30.
Oh,
so
okay.
You're not talking about a super big investment for a game that does have a lot of interesting things about it, and I feel like you could get a bunch of plays out of. Also, like, it's not my favorite Weberson art, but the art is really nice.
It does have that Weberson stamp on it. I don't know. Yeah, interesting. I want to play it again. Fuji. Well, that's pretty much the end of what we did on Friday, but we do have one thing we want to talk about, and oh yes, it's time to go back into the Carcassonne. You like that?
I feel like it's getting more wolf-like.
Yeah, I gotta stay fresh coming into the new era. All right, we're gonna do this one on tap, so here's that bump music. For more information on the beers we chose to pair with today's game on tap, check out the show notes section at our website, draftmechanic.net. So I'm pretty sure this is the first time we've done a Carcassonne on tap since we started the Carcassonne.
No, that's 100% not true.
What did we do?
We did the big one with all of the expansions.
So I'm pretty sure this is the second time we've put a Carcassonne game on tap. No, we've actually did basic Carcassonne. So I'm pretty sure this is the third time we've done a Carcassonne on tap feature, and this one had enough theme for us to do it, I guess.
I mean, it had a catchy enough name that lots of beers are named after.
So should we talk about the game first and then go into the beers?
Sure. Carcassonne,
yes.
That's not what the game is called. It is called New World, a Carcassonne game. Just to, switch things up, make it passive tense, I guess. It is a 2008 release from Handsome Gluck and Rio Grande, which plays 2 to 5 players in 45 minutes. It is designed by Klaus-Jürgen Werder with art by Franz Vollwinkel. This is Carcassonne, but to the right?
It's to the left. It's to the left.
Okay.
We landed on the East Coast, and we came west.
I just got my left and my right confused, all right? I was playing this game upside down most of the time.
Very true. Okay, so in Carcassonne, you are taking tiles and putting them on the table. Sorry, that's not a good way to start this out. We are playing New World, a Carcassonne game, which is an interesting variant on Carcassonne, in which you have a giant kind of score track board that is also the eastern coast of the United States. You have Plymouth up at the top, and then some other cities as well, right? Jamestown, and my history
York,
is lacking.
I believe.
Yeah, New York. But it's going to give you a foundation for you to play the game of Carcassonne. So as you probably know from listening to episodes in the past, or if you're tuning in for the first time, in the game of Carcassonne, you're going to draw a tile off a stack of tiles. You are going to place that tile adjacent to other existing tiles so that its features match up. Roads must meet roads, cities must meet cities, fields must meet fields, and those are the only kinds of features you need to worry about.
Except for bears.
Bears aren't a feature, they're a bug.
I think bears are a feature.
All right, fine. So anyway, the things that are interesting about this one, obviously you have that starting board that is going to kind of dictate how you begin. And just like normal Carcassonne, you have the option to place a meeple on your tile to hopefully claim points whenever one of those features is completed. If
I love points.
Completing cities, and you get 2 points per city, and then plus 2 points per banner. On roads, you get 1 point per road tile. And then when you lay somebody down in a field, we will talk about that later because that one is actually different than base Carcassonne.
Not a farmer.
Not a farmer. They are a trapper. They trap things, specifically animals.
Bears.
There are also 2 surveyor meeples that start on that eastern board, and each time you complete a feature, you're going to move one of those surveyors 1 tile to the west. The thing that's interesting about that is that it's going to kind of also force you to build out to the west quicker and also to put your meeples further out to the west, because if one of the surveyors moves westward and then there are your meeples standing up, not laying down as trappers, but standing up behind both of the surveyors, those meeples, I guess, get eaten by the wilderness.
By the bears.
The game's not super clear. The meeples just come back into your possession. I guess you didn't get that feature done in time for the surveyor to score your points. Sure. No, they get eaten by the trees. That's what I've decided.
By the bears.
You really want it to be bears?
They're...
I want to be eaten by the trees.
Sure.
Tree bears. All right. Anyway, the other thing that's cool is that if the feature you complete is in the same, or your meeple that completes that feature is in the same column as surveyors, you get 4 extra points per surveyor, which actually encourages you to do some like super quick scoring, because if the surveyors are both in the same column and you see an opportunity for a football city, you plunk that in there. Instead of 4 points, you're getting 12. That's a really, really good turnaround on points. The game will continue until, unsurprisingly, you run out of tiles, and then you're going to count up all of the trappers, which operate, they score in a similar way to farming, in that you're going to check the connected land areas, and whoever's the majority is going to score points for that particular field. Instead of it being for closed cities, however, it is just straight up number of animal symbols that are in that particular field. We saw this in Ark of the Covenant, and a few other ones as well, I call this like the type 1 farming
Amazonas
or something. Amazonas has something like that.
Yeah,
It does, because you have the stuff in the forest.
Just pictures of animals, yes.
Yeah. The type 1 farming of just scoring up points rather than type 2 of scoring completed features. Because I've come up with my own terminology for Carcassonne. Is this a problem? Have I gone too deep into the zone?
Yes.
Oh, well, here we are. Anyway, so at the end of the game, whoever has the most points, believe it or not, is going to be the winner of this particular Carcassonne.
How do you feel about this game?
Conflicted.
Why?
It's got a really cool mechanic. I like having the starting board. I like having to move west. But I also felt like I didn't get attached to doing anything in this. Like, I'd never felt ownership of a feature, which is something I look for in a Carcassonne game. Like, I want to be like, I'm building a really cool city. This is such a cool thing I'm developing over here. And I feel like most Carcassonne games give you an opportunity to really develop that feature. Even if it's the road to nowhere, you can always be like, I got this road, it's going nowhere, but it's adding me 1 point at a time. And with the surveyors moving westward, it nullifies the ability to really have any of those kind of lingering features.
See, I liked that about it.
Okay.
I like the idea that if you put a meeple into a city that maybe the tile that is going to complete it gets used somewhere else by another player. Or just, it's not turning out, you're not drawing the tiles that you want, that you can get that meeple back and you can use it further down the line to do something that can actually score you points. And I like the idea that it behooves you to stay on the forefront and not create these giant mammoth things that eventually just score you like a whole round of the score track in one go. Here, you're trying to create small features, but you're trying to create them right when they are new and relevant. And I think it's kind of an interesting way to score it.
Okay.
I do have a bit of a problem with the rulebook on this one.
Yeah.
Because you start with this board, which, like you said, is the East Coast.
It's like 8 or 10 tiles tall.
I believe so.
Yeah.
However tall it is, nowhere in the rulebook does it actually say whether you can expand out of the width of this East Coast starting board. And if you can't, whether or not features that touch the edge are completed or not. It does say that you can add tiles when you're in the adding tiles section. It says you can add tiles either adjacent to existing tiles or to the starting board, which would indicate that you should be able to overgrow the starting board if it is adjacent to other tiles to complete stuff. But almost every photo I found on BGG of people playing this game, they didn't do that. They all stayed within that initial starting board. So, I mean, it feels like something the rulebook should have addressed, and whether or not the edge sort of cauterizes those features so that they are considered complete if they touch the edge. We played that they weren't. They were just, they went out into the wilderness, and I guess if you can build it out so that that feature doesn't end before the end of the map, then you don't get to count it. Which, again, makes it important that you get those meeples back, because if a feature extends to the edge, you're never going to score it in that scoring version. If it's the right version, good. If it's not the right version, they should have put that in the rules. But it makes it valuable to get those meeples back, and I feel like it works in synergy with those surveyors, which is why we did it that way.
So another interesting scenario came up in our second play of this. And
where Jake overtrapped.
This is like, it's the kind of thing that I never really think about happening, but I did, and I literally had all of my meeples down as trappers. So I had a point where, it was probably about 60% of the way through the game, I literally could not place a new follower because I had put all my followers down. It was honestly kind of a dumb decision at the time.
Kind of?
Well, It was a dumb decision, but at the same time, it really made me approach it from an interesting perspective, because at that point, I really had to take the stance of I need stuff to end as quickly as possible, because I have a bunch of points from these fields right now, but if I continue to allow you to get more and more big features, it's going to cause a problem. So I, for the first time, actively was playing tiles in ways that would ruin features you were working on. And that's something that I don't often do in Carcassonne, but I know it's a way that some people play. You can obviously play super aggressive in this game, but it was interesting to do that at the same time of I'm trying to make this end as quickly as possible, so I'm just trying to get more tiles out there and make a lot of weird features that, Danielle can't spend time figuring a way around this to get points out of. But it was an interesting way to play Carcassonne. I don't recommend screwing up your game like that, even though I did kind of come in close to second, or close to...
You definitely came in close to second,
Oh,
because it was a two-player game.
Yeah, you know what I mean.
But at the same time, I was also frustrated by that, because I couldn't get my meeples that I wanted to get back as quickly, because you weren't completing features to move the surveyors, because it didn't behoove you to complete features because you couldn't put meeples on them.
Yeah.
So at the same time, you made an error that hurt your ability to place meeples into features and get points for it. But the game sort of compensated for that, because then I had to do the work to move the surveyors as well as to score the features. So I was trying to get the meeples back when I wanted them to come back, but I had to complete features in order to do that, and I wasn't able to get them back as quickly as when we were both completing features. Now, I'm not entirely sure that's a good thing, because it was like, oh, somebody made an error, everybody's going to have a harder time. But at the same time, I did enjoy this game more than I've enjoyed a lot of the other spin-offs, because I just liked the way that those surveyors brought meeples back.
Yeah. I liked it well enough. I would have it in the Carcassonne collection.
I would too.
It's definitely different enough to warrant being in a Carcassonne Collector's collection. It is unsurprisingly kind of hard to find, so I don't know. Maybe we'll end up getting this one at some point. But yeah.
If not, we know they have it at Geekway.
Yeah. New World. God, I'm having such a hard time saying this. This is like the only Carcassonne game that doesn't have Carcassonne at the front of it. Here we go. New World, a Carcassonne game. Available now on the Board Game Geek store.
Is it?
I mean, I'm sure somebody's trading it.
Fair enough. Let's talk about some beers that go with New World, a Carcassonne game.
All right. You want to lead us off?
Sure. First off, we've got from Mayflower Brewing Company in Plymouth, Massachusetts, which seemed fitting. We've got New World IPA, which is a 6% ABV, unfiltered IPA, built on a pale and wheat malt backbone, and then it is loaded up with Eldorado, Mosaic, and Citra hops for a big pineapple and mango aromas.
Aromas.
And this is, I believe, part of their core lineup up at Mayflower, and it is available canned.
Next up, from Northern Monk in Leeds, West Yorkshire, England, we have New World IPA. Clocks in at 6.2% ABV. This one is a tribute to the first hops from the New World, those with citrus, zest, and pine notes. Its combined profile of hops from the US, Australia, and Britain gives a subtle sweetness from the British pale malt and resinous grapefruit and tropical fruit notes from the hop bill.
Next up, from Avery Brewing Company in Boulder, Colorado, we have New World Porter, which is a fun pun. It is a black IPA, they're saying, but it is really their beloved porter, which has been dry hopped with Centennial and Simcoe hops. This is 6.7% ABV and 48 IBU. They had previously released this in bottles, but it is currently listed as a taproom rarity, so you can get it at the taproom. People are logging it now, but it is not currently in bottles. Maybe they will do it again. Maybe they won't. Either way, it's good. And if you are looking for something darker, it is the only thing that you're going to find on this list.
Who truly understands the machinations of Avery Brewing Company's release schedule?
I would hope Avery Brewing Company does.
I mean, it's their job. Finally, Coast Mountain Brewing in Whistler, British Columbia, that is in Canada. They have Surveyor. It is an IPA at 7% ABV. This one is massively hop-forward, built to structure the hops of the Pacific Northwest, Columbus, Chinook, Centennial, and Citra. Available in the Canadian equivalent of 16-ounce cans.
I believe that is 473 milliliter cans?
It's an odd number of milliliters.
Yeah, I mean, it could be 474, and then it would be an even number of milliliters.
Did you just make a pun?
I did.
I do really want to say, I appreciate you doing some good thematic pairings here, like I always do, but like picking the beer from Plymouth, really cool stuff. Smart call.
They probably named it New World because,
No, this is you. You did good.
Oh, thanks.
I'm proud of you. All right, Saturday and Sunday. Time to roll into these last 2 days. We did play Teotihuacan City of Gods 2018 from Board and Dice /NSKN. We're not going to talk about it yet because one play is definitely not enough to talk about Teotihuacan on. Holy moly.
Yeah.
There is a big old game in that box.
Especially since we only played with the base locations, so we do want to get a chance to play this not only again so we know what we're doing, but also with some of the variable locations for that game.
Mm-hmm.
We did enjoy it enough to play it a second time, though, so I guess that's a little bit of a boost, right?
Oh, yeah. I definitely want to play this 2, maybe 6 more times.
Cool.
Just got to get our hands on it. Grab that pyramid. It's my pyramid now.
You can't steal the pyramid.
No? Why not?
Anyway.
Fine.
We also got to play Fire in the Library, which is a 2019 release from Weird Giraffe Games that plays 1 to 6 players in 15 to 30 minutes. The designer is Tony Miller, and the artists are Beth Sobel and Katie Cow. This is a game of push your luck bag drawing, but a fire is destroying your library, so that's not great.
Yes, unlike Fuji, which is a volcano, this one is a fire, and it is in your library. You are all trying to save books from the library, which is on fire, as is obviously alluded to in the title of the game. You're going to start with a turn order selection that will give you a card, and on this card there are a few different spots for books, and by books I mean cubes you're drawing out of this bag. The cubes are in 4 different colors of books, it's yellow, purple, white, and other. Black, and then there's also red cubes. The red cubes are fire, and you are sad about them if you draw them because that means things will burn. Depending on what turn order cards you pick, you're going to have some spots on there that are safe, and then there's some that are risky. The risky spaces mean if you're drawing for that spot and it's a red cube, you're going to immediately catch on fire. The safe spots give you like a 1 cube buffer, and as you go down in turn order, you get more safe spaces and less of the risky spaces. This is important because obviously in turn order, you're going to start drawing out of this bag. You're going to draw cubes out, and you can choose to stop at any time and save some of those books, and then you will score points based on the colors you have, corresponding to a set of 4 cards in the center of the table. The 4 different stacks are 1 stack for each of the different colors of book, and they have a different varying level of points depending on what card is visible. They all start out kind of small, and then as you go through and burn more into the library, there'll be more valuable books. So at one point, you kind of want to be getting a bunch of books, but at the same time, you don't want to be pushing your luck too far, because if you do end up drawing enough cubes to burn, you're going to then lose what you've drawn so far and start burning cards off of those stacks. You will burn cards off depending on what books you had attempted to save so far. They will ignite, they will go up in smoke, and cards will come off the stacks, which is good in one way because the next card probably has a higher number of points on it. I think
it always does.
I thought there was one that like went up a little and then down and then back up.
No.
Okay, I was wrong. Anyway, I'm wrong about that thing. But it's also, of course, very bad because A, books are burning and your library is burning down, and B, it's pushing you towards the end of the game, and obviously the other player is going to have a better chance of getting those higher points before you do. So when you do choose to run away from the library with whatever books you've saved, you're going to score points for those books, and you're also going to hopefully score some points for bravery points on your personal card. Some of the risky spaces give you 2, 4, 6, 8, so on and so forth points. You'll also hopefully get some tool cards, which are single-time use equipment or special scoring options for books that you have saved that are, just fun little tweaks like, you can throw this bucket of water to save a book, stop a book from burning, or maybe this slingshot to throw fire at the other player, which is weird, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, that you just, launch a book that is on fire at another player with a slingshot, and that's a good thing?
Whatever.
Huh. That's a choice in mechanics. But anyway, the game will go on until one of the stacks is burned down to its 10-point card, at which case you will do all your final scoring, and then somebody will have fired in the library most. No, save the most books and be the most librariest.
Anti-fired in the library, I suppose.
They're the most librariest. That's the words.
This game was not my favorite, which, I feel bad saying, because the theme is so awesome. Like, saving all these books. The fire part, not awesome. Nobody wants a fire in a library, but the idea that it is so unique. Like, you're not going to play a ton of games about saving books from a burning library, but I think it's just, I'm not a huge fan of push your luck, and while there was plenty of mitigation, the tool cards that you had mentioned are really helpful. They allow you to sometimes look at the cubes you're drawing and only place a smaller number than you've drawn into your turn order card. So if you draw 1 fire and 1 book, you can get rid of the fire and put the book into your turn order. Or they allow you to, like you said, the bucket of water, which allows you to put out fire if you draw a fire cube that allows you to burst into flames. I think there was like a cloak that allows you to save a book even if everything catches on fire, and some gloves which make all of your spaces safe spaces as opposed to risky spaces. So there's lots of cards that allow you to manipulate the push your luck, but I don't know, I just kind of felt like you were just always reaching in and being like, okay, I hope this is what I want. This is a game of where the main mechanic is hoping, and that didn't really feel super fun to me, which is kind of a bummer.
I had a lot of fun with this, but
Really?
I think I am much more of a push your luck person than you are. This is very true. Anytime we play Can't Stop, I am the one who cannot stop, and you definitely have chosen to stop it many times. And same like Quacks of Quedlinburg, I always want to draw that next token out. And I think what I enjoyed about the push your luck in this is it ramped up in a very satisfying way. You're adding more of the fire cubes as it goes on, so I feel more confident in the beginning of the game, and I kind of get that tempered as I go on because I'm seeing more fire go into the library or into the bag, and I'm also seeing more cubes come out of the bag in that there are some cards that might take a cube, for the rest of the game, like this is my scoring cube such and such. So I really enjoyed the escalation of the push your luck in this game. A lot of push your luck games don't escalate very well, or if they do anything, they kind of de-escalate. Descalators? Yeah?
No, de-escalate is a word. You were
Okay,
fine.
de-escalate. So, like, Can't Stop is a flat level of push your luck, no matter what turn you're on. Quacks of Quedlinburg definitely de-escalates because as you get more and more tokens in there, it's easier to draw out better stuff. You don't, because the bags will guarantee you're going to draw all of your white tokens and bust no matter what, because that's what happens to me, so I assume it happens to everybody. But Fire in the Library has a really interesting escalation, and that's something I don't get a lot in push your luck games, and it's what really got me excited about it. I was doing some great turns in the beginning of the game, and I definitely felt more cautious as the game went on, which I feel is thematically appropriate for that game.
Yeah, and I guess you're right. Like, I definitely don't like that weird, stressful feeling like, oh, I could just lose everything at any moment. That is not enjoyable to me. Perhaps that's just a read on a cautious personality. But I don't like that stress. And I agree, like, Can't Stop, there's a little bit of escalation because once you finish a row, you can't put more stuff in that row, but that's minimal and only as you're getting closer to the end of the game. This definitely was a more active escalation, and that definitely fits with the types of games that you like as opposed to I do. This is one of those rare games where we have very different opinions on a game.
Yeah. This is definitely one that I would say, if you enjoy Push Your Luck, go give it a play, and I think that it would be one that you want in your collection. I honestly would like a copy of this. I think this might be something I get someday.
Well,
not like immediately.
Good news is there's like 3 different solo variants. There is the solo librarian, there is the solo with a robot, and then there's like a third robot player solo variant.
Librarabot.
Yeah, there were 3 different solo ways that you could play this game, and there was also an expansion that we did not play with because we just didn't read the rules for it at the time. So there is additional content that you can add into it. So if you were getting this to play as a solo game, there is a rich vein of opportunity for it.
So what you're saying is I have to play this game by myself in the future?
I might be saying that, yes.
That's all right. Yeah, Fire in the Library. I think it's worth checking out, and maybe it's a game for you.
It's not.
Not you, but, the listener you.
Yes, it might be for the listener.
Listener who is out there, thank you for listening. You might like this game. As the day went on, we obviously talked to more people, played more games. We played a whole bunch of random stuff. We got to play Matryoshka a bunch of times. Oh, this is the day we went to go get chicken, so that took a good bit of our evening.
It did, but we got chicken out of it.
Southern, so good. And we ended up, I guess the fancy gaming was on Saturday. We decided to not get fancy this year, so we just posted up at one of the round tables right in front of fancy gaming. We kind of just waved at everybody in their fancy dresses they went by, and we were all very comfortable in our, shorts and comfortable t-shirts and all that, and it was very nice. I like to be relaxed. But anyway, earlier in the day, we were playing Teotihuacan, and listener, I think his name is Brian, came by and says, hey, I'm a listener to the show, and I really want to play Matryoshka. And I'm like, you, sir, you have found the right people. So we played. He met up with us there. We played a game of Matryoshka, and I adore it. Everybody go back it on Kickstarter. You got a few days left. And he actually brought with him a game called Cabo that Bezier Games just put out in a second edition. It's a 2019 release from Bezier, 2 to 4 players, 45 minutes. This is designed by Melissa Melissa Limes and Mandy Henning, and it is a card game where you are secretly collecting low numbers, but also unicorns. If you're very lucky, you can get a unicorn. Oh, and I will say, before you go into the rules explanation, they are kind of revamping this game and releasing it as something called Silver, that they had a demo version of at Geekway. We didn't get a chance to play it, but they're doing that and some version called Silver Bullet, and it looks like they're making a whole line out of games based on this card mechanic, which is, I guess, kind of the Bezier MO, is to take a thing and then run with it as far as you can.
Now, stop that. We had been told by a couple of people that this is based on a card game, Golf, which is a parlor game that I was not particularly familiar with, but that was what the basis of this is. And Cabo is the idea you are trying to get the closest to the unicorn, which is a wild theme, but it had adorable artwork.
That's how I try to live my life, just get close to that unicorn as I can.
I'm going to need you to not.
Okay.
In this game, you are going to start with 4 cards face down in front of you. At the beginning of each hand, you are going to get a chance to look at 2 of those cards, so you know what half of what you're working with is. And then on your turn, you have a couple of options. You can either draw a card off the center stack blindly and replace one of your cards, then flipping that card face up into the discard pile, or you can take the card from the top of the discard pile and place it, replacing one of your cards, leaving it face up so everybody knows what card you have. Or you can call Cabo. If you call Cabo, you are going to say that you have the lowest total value of cards, and if that's correct, you don't take any points. The object of this game is not to take points.
Yay.
If you do not have the lowest value of points and you called Cabo, there is a 10-point penalty for having done so, and you will get the total value of your points. Everybody else who didn't call Cabo will just get the value of their points. There are a couple of little twists on this. At some point, you can choose to say, I have 2 cards which are the same value, and I'd like to switch them for 1 card. Then you'll flip those 2 cards face up. If they are of the same value, then you can switch them for the 1 card like you intended, which brings you down in number of cards, increasing the chance that you have the lowest value of cards because you have fewer cards. And if you're wrong, you take an extra card into your tableau, increasing the chance that you don't have the lowest value of cards because you have more cards. This is not a hard idea.
You are sad.
Some of the cards have a power that if you draw them off the top of the deck, you can use it to swap cards with other players. Those can be face-up cards. If they have a very low-value card, you can swap for that. Or they can be face-down cards. You can just sort of swap a card that you know is a high value for something that somebody else has face-down, hoping that it's not a high value. You're going to keep going until somebody calls Cabo, then you're going to flip up all your cards, add up the points that you get for that round, and you play until somebody gets more than 100 points. I believe if you get exactly 100 points, you automatically drop down to 50 points.
Yeah.
So there's sort of like a second chance, but more interestingly than second chance. And you're going to keep playing, and sort of Rummy 500 style, where you just play until somebody hits the point threshold. And that's how you play Cabo.
I am a sucker for an interesting classic card game, and I am a sucker for Cabo. This hits my spot. I really like these kind of games where you're just playing with a deck of cards. You don't have to put a huge amount of attention into it, so it's super easy to just have a chat over.
Yeah, but this is a memory game, so if you have too intense of a chat, you could very quickly just screw your whole hand over.
You are not wrong, and that happened to me on more than one occasion. But I really enjoyed it, and I gotta say, the production or the art on this is awesome. It's so like weirdly surreal, kind of like Monument Valley, the iPhone game, but not so isometric, just kind of like halfway between that and Katamari Damacy, kind of like weird surrealism, and also the unicorn. It was really cool.
Yeah, I mean, the art is what makes this game worth buying in any aspect, because otherwise you could literally just play this with a deck of cards.
True.
You need the numbers, and then you could just put in jokers for the unicorns because there are no zeros in a deck of cards. But, like, this is the only reason that you would buy this game is for the art, and I guess so you didn't have to remember which cards had the special powers. It's fine. I mean, if you're going to buy this for less than $10, having the nice artwork and the powers written on the cards is cool. It is a pretty standard parlor game, so, I mean, I would just as well play this as I would play, like, Rummy 500.
Yeah.
So, it's fine.
Yeah. I would throw this in the quiver. This is the kind of game that I would just throw in a quiver and just have in there and just be like, oh, well, I completely forgot I had this. Let's play this game. And I feel like it would always go over pretty well.
Yeah, and I think it also really works if you are trying to facilitate, like, a gaming relationship with people that you're not necessarily super close to, because you have to pay attention to what other people are doing, and you're constantly like switching cards with other players and trying to remember, and feeling kind of silly when you can't remember whether or not it was the leftmost card or the next to leftmost card, which was the 0, and then you go to switch it and you got the wrong one. It makes for those funny moments that are great if you're playing with somebody you don't know. Like we had just met Brian that day, but we had a good fun time playing this game with him. Slightly better than meh. It was a good game.
Yeah.
But one that, unless you really want the cool art, you don't necessarily need to buy.
I want the cool art. I'll probably end up
That's
picking it
fine,
up.
and I like the cool art too, and this game is less than $10, so it's not like the end of the world to get it for the cool art.
Well, that's good, because I'm probably going to do exactly that.
Cool.
Yeah, Cabo. It is available, and you can buy it. There you go. We got a good one that you can buy for under $10. Yeah. There's been some good buys in this last section of the
you
thing.
wanted Fire in the Library. I think that's available, right?
And frankly, I think a lot of people will get a lot out of Tiny Towns, which is also a sub-$30 game.
But
if
not
you
us.
go online. Yeah. Rest of Saturday night, we kind of just hung around. We were upstairs in that area. The Mile High Game guys were hanging out. They were playing like they were playing Tsukiyumi. That's what it was.
Yeah.
And if you want to hear about that, they actually put up their Geekway episode last Friday, because they are the most podcast of all time.
They also have a full episode on Tsukiyumi.
So this is actually kind of funny. I was listening to that episode. So they record their banter episodes on Wednesday, or for the Wednesday episode, and then they do a review for Friday. They planned on doing Cryptid for a review for Friday. But they ended up, or Zach and Jeff ended up talking for an hour and 5 minutes in the banter about Geekway. So they cut that section out and used it as the Friday episode, and then had another like 25 minutes or so at the end of that episode.
Fair enough.
They got a lot to say. So yeah, if you're looking for more podcasts, the most podcasts, Mile High Game guys can definitely do that for you.
Yeah, I definitely saw some of their group playing Cryptid, so I'm interested to see what they have to say about Cryptid.
I almost walked up and picked the correct spot, so I'm really excited to find out what that
Oh no, I'm talking
one
about a
actually
different
turned
game
out
of
as.
Cryptid that I saw that Paul was playing.
Oh no, I'm sure that was some fun. As the night went on, we kind of just played a lot more stuff. One game that came up a lot was a game called We're Doomed, which we are actually going to probably have more plays of in the near future. Looking to get a copy of that and talk about it. And it's a crazy, wacky convention party style game, 15-minute sand timer, all real time, lots of screaming and shouting, and we will probably talk about that more in the future.
We definitely will.
But one other game that I super want to talk about, and is now finally appropriate to talk about, is a game called 3 Laws of Robotics.
Yes, this is a 2019 release from Floodgate Games, which is actually available for pre-order right now. It plays 4 to 8 players in 30 to 45 minutes, designed by Ben Canelos and art by Matt Paquette and Tristan Rossum. This is a game of deduction, but it is a deduction game which is social, and that's the correct way to put those words. Also, it's a game of Tamagotchis.
Okay, so 3 Laws of Robotics, like you said, is a deduction game that is social. I think that's the best way to put it. This is not a social deduction game. You are not, doing werewolfy or Avalon-y kind of things in it, but you are going to be doing some interesting social kind of information gathering. Everybody has a card that is in one of 3 different factions. You have the AIs, the robots, and the androids, and they are numbered 1 through 5, with 5 being the highest. At player count, you take a few out, but let's just say 1 through 5 to keep it simple. At an 8-player game, you're going to use all the cards. So you'll shuffle them up, you'll deal them out, and do not look at your own card, because that is the only card that you are not going to be able to see. You're going to hold that up Hanabi style, so all other players can see it, and they will know what you are and what rank you are. You're going to look around the table, and you're going to have the information about everybody else. And the way it's going to work is you want to pass your security key, which is another card you have, to whatever player is the highest rank of the faction that you are. Obviously, you don't know what faction you are. You don't know what rank you are. You don't know if you should keep all your keys, but you're going to find out by asking one direct question to another player at the table. Everybody gets exactly one question. You're going to go around, you're going to ask your question. The player responding to you can lie if they want. However, if they lie, the people around you are going to know, and they're going to use that to obviously inform their own decisions. But I might ask a question like, hey, am I an AI? Very simple. Or am I the highest rank you can see? Which gives me information, but also gives me information, or gives the other players that know my rank information about whether or not I'm the right person to pass it to, or whether or not the person over there is lying about wanting to pass stuff to me because they see the person next to me as a different faction, so on and so forth. That in itself is interesting, and then at the end of the round, you pass all your security keys, or you choose to keep them. If If only the highest ranking member of your faction has security keys, you score a point card. They're 1 to 3 points randomly distributed. Whichever faction has the most security keys will also get an extra victory point card, which is good because then you get more victory point cards. And then you have a pretty good feel for how the game is going to play. But there is a twist. We have those laws that I mentioned in the name of the game, but didn't explain how they're in any way involved. They happen because in the first, second, and then third rounds of the game, you're going to flip over these law cards that give you a rule for how you're going to interact. And these aren't just like stupid human tricks. It's not like you have to clap twice before you say stuff. Some of them are
stupid human tricks.
Like after you're done, you have to say logging off. Or if you pick up your phone, you have to do such and such. Or one that comes up pretty frequently for us is you're not allowed to smile or frown. That's the Uncanny Valley card. There's one that you're not allowed to use pronouns. But there's a few questions or a few cards that will also manipulate the way you can answer questions. Like, you must lie to AI. You cannot ask a question to the highest ranked person at the table, so on and so forth. So you'll pull out new cards each round, 1 in the first, 2 in the second, 3 in the third, and it's going to really complicate the way you ask the questions, and especially as you get later into rounds, you're going to be hopefully remembering the rules that you have in play and not remembering rules from earlier. If somebody catches you breaking a rule, they can call an error on you. They get a token that will give you more victory points, obviously. Between each round, you re-deal out the cards, so you're always shifting. You don't stay on the same teams forever because that would destroy the entire point of the deduction of this game. And then at the end of it, you count up your victory point cards, and whoever is the most, I guess, is the most robot, or at least the most law of robots. Yes. I'm a huge fan of this game. Floodgate sent us this as a prototype, just kind of play around with. You know, we talked a lot with them about Bosk and a few other things, bad maps in the past. But this is exactly the kind of game that I want to take to parties, or not parties, but like larger group gatherings. It hits exactly what I want, which is deduction that is social, because I do not like social deduction. I don't want to play Werewolf. I don't want to play Secret Hitler. I don't want to play a lot of those kind of games. But give me some deduction and give me some interesting twists on that, and I am all in. So the fact that this game, A, exists, B, is super quick and easy to teach, C, has produced some genuinely hilarious moments as people are trying to like wrap their brains around the questions that they want to ask and what that answer actually meant. And D, it's $15, which is a pretty dang good price.
Yeah, I mean, it is a price point that makes it so easy to say, go pre-order this game. It is going to have a ton of fun. Now, we did get to play this again with Alex from Dukes of Dice, Grey Fox Games, and he likes social deduction games and was sort of frustrated at this game that it was a deduction game.
Yes.
So if you don't like deduction games, you're not going to like this game.
Yup.
We both like deduction games and are not crazy about social deduction games and both really enjoy this.
See my love for Cryptid as a source on this.
True. I also like the idea that you don't necessarily need to know exactly what you are by the end of the round of questioning, because you're more than likely not going to know exactly what you are by the end of the round of questioning. But if you only know that you do or do not need to pass your key, you can make a pretty good go of it, because the way the scoring works is if only the highest member of a faction has keys at the end of that round, then everybody in the faction gets points, which means I may be of a lower rank and pass my key to a completely different faction, but it means I don't have it anymore. And if only the highest ranking person has any keys, then I'm still going to get a chance to get some of those points. Now, if you have the most keys, you're going to get more points. So maybe I deprive myself of a few points by passing those keys. Or maybe I don't know anything about what I'm doing, and I'm just going to keep my key, and that turns out to be a really good thing because I'm the only one of my faction, and I'm going to get actually more points for being the only one of my faction because nobody's trying to help me out.
Yep.
I also like the fact that the keys are passed in order from the start player. So if you are around towards the end of the circle, you're actually getting a little bit of information from what other players have gleaned, which I also like because, again, that's information that I can use to deduce. The laws are just sort of an additional fun thing about this game that make you think about what you're asking and what you're answering and what information you're going to get from what you're asking, because asking the same question in different rounds with different laws may give you different pieces of information. It also makes the fact that other people can lie an interesting part of the game and not just a frustration, because if they can lie, it is entirely possible that they are using it to make you think something that isn't true. Like on the card that says you must lie to AIs, it doesn't say you can't lie to anyone else. So the other players can use that if they're not on your faction to get you to think you are an AI if you're not necessarily one.
I love this game. It's fantastic. I'm probably going to pick up a regular copy of it anyway, just because I want to have cards that are going to last a little bit longer than the prototype stuff. And yeah, if you like deduction, check this out. It's super worth it.
I also like that they wrote on the back of the cards, do not look at this card. Because how many times did you want to look at that card when it was put face down in front of you?
I mean, that's kind of what I do with cards. I look at them.
But it says right on the back of it, do not look at this card.
This is my card, but I can't have the information on it.
Nope.
All right, well, that is 3 Laws of Robotics. It is available from Floodgate Games' website right now. And apparently it's already shipping from their website. They're just doing the pre-order through their website before it hits actual retail. So if you want to get that game first and do the thing first, you can do it.
Yes. Yes, you can.
So that pretty much rounded out our Saturday. You know, we played games way too late because that's what you do at conventions. Sunday morning, kind of just saying goodbye to everybody. We got a chance to play a new game from Brian Surrey that is in development from our friends over at Elf Creek Games. It's super cool. Hopefully we get to know more about that in the next few months. Walked around, got to say goodbye to everybody. And, we walked through the flea market, the tail end of the flea market as well. I picked up a copy of a game called Arcadia, an old Rudiger Dorn game that has like a city building construction thing. I don't know a lot about it, except for the fact that I remember I wanted to play it real bad, and I got it for $10-20. So that's kind of what I'm doing.
Yeah, I mean, you do love a good Rudiger Dorn game.
Yeah, and then we had a very long drive home. We stopped in Nashville, had some delicious sausages, and you had a good old burger.
I did.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. That's Geekway. Hey, everybody, go to Geekway. Geekway's awesome.
It is.
It's going to be in June. It's the week before Origins next week, which kind of sucks. That sucks a lot, but we're going to go to Geekway because Geekway's amazing, and we'll have a Geekway bottle share, the 3rd year of it, if they allow us to. I assume we will be able to.
I assume so.
And if not, we'll have a beer anyway because it's Geekway and I love it. Danielle, you've got a beer segment to round us out this episode, I believe?
I do, but let's get to that good punchboard bump first.
Want a second opinion on some of the games we talked about on this episode? Check out some other great content creators at punchboardmedia.com.
So I think I talked a little bit about nitrogenation in tap systems when we were talking about dry Irish stouts about 3 or 4 episodes ago.
Right, Guinness.
Yes, Guinness. And Guinness is actually the company that pioneered the nitrogenation in packaging as well. And I wanted to talk a little bit about that, specifically about the widgets that are used to nitrogenate beer, or to make sure that nitrogenated beer is up to the standard of people who are used to drinking nitrogen beer off a tap system. When you buy a normal non-nitrogenated beer, your standard whatever you buy off the non-Guinness shelf, it is carbonated with CO2. And the CO2, whether it is bottle conditioned or force carbonated, is dissolved into the liquid. And when you crack open the can, the pressure inside the can is greater than the pressure outside of the can. And that causes agitation, and the CO2 comes out of solution and foams up, and that's what leads to the head on beer. Since CO2 is easily dissolved in liquid, you don't need any additional help to make this happen. Just opening the can is enough agitation for that CO2 to come out of solution. The problem is with nitrogenated beer, they carbonate it with a combination of CO2 and nitrogen, obviously because it's nitrogenated beer, but nitrogen is much harder to dissolve in liquid. So they need to find a way to make the nitrogen, which they have to force into the carbonation, to come out and form that creamy head, because not only is it more difficult to do, but it is sort of the trademark of a nitrogenated beer, that really smooth, thick head that is, I mean, if you look at a Guinness, you know what the head on a Guinness looks like. And since it's so important to the experience of that beer, they needed to find a way to do it when you bought it out of a can or out of a bottle instead of off of a tap system. Again, like I said, they do this with something called a widget. And for Guinness, a widget looks a lot like a ping pong ball with a tiny hole in it. There is another company that makes cans that have widgets in them. That company is Ball, the people who make ball jars.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So they also make cans, lots of them.
They also helped invent the crowler.
Yes, which is just a big can.
Yeah, I know.
But in Ball's cans, the widget is attached to the bottom, but it works the same way. It has a small hole in it, and in both cases, inside the widget, it is charged with a little bit of nitrogen gas. When they go to fill the can, first they purge the oxygen out of the can, like you would purge any can before you fill it so it doesn't oxygenate the beer. And then they have either the widget is attached to the bottom of the can, or they place the widget in the can, and then they fill it up with beer. Then, if you are making a nitrogenated can, you put a little bit of liquid nitrogen into the can right before you close it. What happens then is the liquid nitrogen dissolves, because liquid nitrogen dissolves at room temperature, and it increases the pressure inside the can. By increasing the pressure, you actually force some of the beer in through that tiny hole into the widget. When you open the can, the nitrogen inside the widget expands because of the difference in pressure and forces the liquid that is inside the widget out through that tiny hole again. The way that the beer moves out through that tiny hole works essentially the way a nitrogen tap does, and forcing it through that small hole agitates the beer enough to create that creamy, foamy head that you are associating with a nitrogenated beer. So that is how you get it out of a packaged product, through this little widget product. There are some companies that do a widgetless nitrogenated beer. Those are sold in bottles. If you look at Left Hand Milk Stout, which is the one that I generally think of when I think of a widgetless packaged product, there are other breweries that do it, but Left Hand does a very wide distribution of their bottled nitrogenated beers.
Mystical and magical.
They all say pour hard on them, because what they're counting on is when you literally upend a bottle over a glass, which is what pour hard means. It doesn't mean like tilt it a little more than you would a normal can. It means turn that sucker upside down above the glass in a way that anybody who's ever poured over a beer is like, that's going to cause a mess. But it doesn't, because that is the amount of that is the amount of agitation that nitrogenated beer requires if you don't have this widget in it. They also have to balance the amount of gases, the nitrogen and the CO2. They spent a lot of time and did a lot of science to get the balance just right so that you don't need to have that widget. But that's why you have to upend that bottle so much, is because that creates enough agitation to get the head that you would get otherwise from a widget.
I haven't had that beer in a long time.
Well, you should.
I still
go get some.
Think back to
Not right now. We're doing
getting
this.
those first ones. All right, carry on.
When they actually do Left Hand Milk Stout in cans, they still include a widget in it, because there is a difference. When you make a can, when you fill a can, there is a different procedure. Obviously, cans are made of very thin sheets of aluminum as opposed to being made of fairly solid glass. So there is difference in the science and the technology that you use to fill a can, and frankly, it probably is just easier for them to use the existing technology of a widget in a canned product, and keep their widgetless technology with bottles. But I wanted to talk about that because a lot of times, like, how many times have you seen a can of Guinness and you shake it around when it's empty and you hear that widget in there? But I, for the longest time, had no idea why. Why does that make this do anything? And the answer is because it is essentially agitating that beer when you open the can in a way that nitrogenated beer normally wouldn't. So now you know why your Guinness has a widget in it.
I understand now. Now I understand this.
Another point that was brought up in one of the articles that I was reading about this is that when you order those widget cans from Ball, there is a minimum order quantity, which is unsurprising with any any kind of product that you're bringing into as a raw material. There's going to be an order quantity. So a lot of smaller breweries were trying to progress towards the widgetless bottle system because they didn't want to order 10,000 cans. Or they're working off a mobile canning line or something like that.
Yeah.
So there is a benefit to this widget. It allows you to get that nice creamy foamy texture, but there is a downside as well. If you're Guinness, you can use the Guinness system, but that's proprietary. And if you're buying this Ball product, you can buy it, but you have to buy a lot of it. So, there is certainly, I guess, a bouginess about being able to produce a nitrogenated beer. But hey, when you get one and it's super tasty, it can be just delightful. So now you know a little bit about that.
Well, thank you. I've been interested in that, the nitrogenated, and the fact that the Left Hand Milk Stout nitro bottles have have to be agitated like that. I've always wondered how that works because it just is like magic to me. I just pour hard because the bottle tells me to, and the beer comes out. It is good.
That is what they're counting on.
Mm-hmm.
They gave you simple directions. They assume you follow them.
Like I was saying earlier, like I still have the fond memory of just like we were so excited to get the very first 6-pack of Milk Stout Nitro. We brought it home and we were just like, let's do some pour hards. And we did. And we were just like watching it, like, let's get it on video. This is so crazy. This happened.
Okay.
Less excited than that, but it happened.
Okay.
All right.
Let's wrap this up.
Yeah, this has been a nice long one. Thank you so much, listeners, for joining us here on this episode 101 of Draft Mechanic. We are obviously proud members of Punchboard Media, and you can find us on the internet at draftmechanic.net and at draftmechanic on your favorite social medias, as long as those social medias are Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Those are the places we are. So, yeah. At and or / those places.
Also, we have a Board Game Geek Guild. That is guild number 2470. As I said earlier, there will be a thread up for this episode, as there is for every episode. If you happen to be in the Charlotte, North Carolina area, our next meetup is going to be on Thursday, June 6th at Good Road Cider Works, and we would love to see you there.
2 notes at the end of this episode. One of them is some good friends of ours, Aaron and Quentin and Lindsay over at Boards Alive podcast, are sunsetting their primary flagship podcast next week, and we super want everybody to go show them some love. BoardsAlivePodcast.com, or just search Boards Alive on your podcast feed. They're not ending forever. They are just sunsetting the main review show. They're just kind of, they just finished their 5-year anniversary and are looking to kind of get fresh and do some new things. They're going to continue their Boards Alive plays where they're doing RPG. They're doing like a Tomb of Horrors right now. That's been a lot of fun. Aaron has a show, Boards a Little, that he does with his kids and is adorable and hilarious. And Aaron and Lindsay also do It's Date Night, which is their kind of 15-ish minute 2-player date night show. Aaron also has some plans to do some more fun stuff in the future. He says one of the things he's looking at is maybe doing some more comedy podcast stuff. Like if you heard us go on there and do the Cool Board Games Inc. a few months ago, that was fun, and it shows that there's definitely a lot of fun going on there. So a big thanks to all the Boards Alive team. They've been good friends of ours since we started off, and I'm super sad to see the flagship show go, but I'm also super excited to see what's coming in the future from them.
Aww. So cute.
Yes, my Canada boys. Draft Mechanic is sponsored by Grey Fox Games. You can visit greyfoxgames.com and sign up for their newsletter for the latest. Grey Fox Games, quality games, cleverly crafted. Yeah, that's it. I don't know. I got anything else? You?
As always, I would like to remind our listeners to please game responsibly and tell them that I'll see them back here in 2 weeks for another round.
Cool. Sounds like a deal.
Night.
Night. Draft Mechanic episode 101 was recorded on Saturday, May 25th, 2019 in front of a live studio cat.
Beauty is in your eyes, you are the beholder. You render me stricken. Do not go gently into that gutter line.
Hey, this is Patrick
And this is Eric
from
Patrick and Eric in the morning. Join us every now and again for about a half an hour as we freeform chat about whatever's on our minds and how it all relates back to our favorite hobby, board gaming.
Patrick and Eric in the Morning can be found on the What Did You Play This Week podcast feed and on the Punchboard Media site.
Happy listening.
Punchboard Media, where we all bring something to the table.
Pull up a chair
at punchboardmedia.com.